Chapter 305. Why? Questions appeared in Qin Yu's mind. Logically speaking, he had just arrived at the Sky Imperial Palace. He shouldn't have anything to do with the descendants of the 12 war generals. Unless Sun Shiyu's purpose in bringing him to the Sky Imperial Palace was to endanger the descendants of the 12 war generals. Only then would the descendants of the war generals join forces to stop him from entering the Ancestral Hall. In the Sky Imperial Palace, the difference in status and treatment between the core disciples and the ordinary disciples was like heaven and earth. For example, only the core disciples were qualified to comprehend the true skills of the three emperors. Could it really be related to the inheritance of the three emperors? Elder Qi, you're also a senior in the palace. Then, have you ever seen anyone in the palace who has obtained the complete inheritance of the three sovereigns? Sun Shiyu stepped forward, her white clothes fluttering in the wind. It has never happened in the history of the Sky Imperial Palace. Qin Yuan's eyebrows moved slightly as he slowly shook his head. This was the situation that everyone in the Sky Imperial Palace knew and couldn't refute. But Shun Feng has comprehended all the inheritances of the three emperors, Sun Shiyu said as she looked at Qin Yu. Qin Yu understood, and the inheritances of the three emperors appeared one after another. The elders and disciples in the Ancestral Hall were in a heated discussion. The voices that originally suspected that Qin Yu wasn't the descendant of the three emperors also disappeared, although they had heard Sun Shiyu mention it before. Seeing it with their own eyes was still quite shocking. Such a situation was indeed the only case in the Sky Imperial Palace. Elder Qi, do you think that Shun Feng isn't qualified to become a core disciple with his talent? Sun Shiyu asked. Shun Feng's talent is indeed extremely rare. However, our ancestors fought bravely with their flesh and blood. That was the reason why our Sky Emperor Palace was able to achieve its current glory. Therefore, the rules set by the ancestors cannot be trampled. I still don't agree with Shun Feng becoming a core disciple, since the descendants of the 12 war generals had a plan to not let Qin Yu become a core disciple. Naturally, they wouldn't give in just because Qin Yu had comprehended the inheritance of the three emperors. I think Elder Qi's words make sense. Indeed, the rules set by the ancestors are the foundation of the Sky Imperial Palace and cannot be changed. But with Shun Feng's talent, if we don't focus on nurturing him, wouldn't it be a waste? That's right. Since the establishment of the palace, there has never been such a monstrous genius. Since that's the case, it shouldn't be difficult for Shun Feng to advance to the martial emperor realm in the future. Inside the Ancestral Hall, the three emperor elders and the 12 generals' elders were arguing with one another, resulting in a chaotic scene. The elders of the 12 battle generals are all against it. Could it be? Sun Shiyu looked at the 12 battle generals and elders, a strange light flashing in her eyes. Could it be that the 12 battle generals and elders knew about the prophecy left behind by the three sovereigns? I have a plan. Suddenly, a voice interrupted the chaotic scene. It was the black-robed old woman, Qin Gongyan. Shun Feng's aptitude is astonishing. If we don't nurture him, it would indeed be a waste of his talent. However, if he was allowed to enter the Ancestral Hall and become a core disciple, it would be against the rules of the ancestors. Since that is the case, why don't we follow the rules of the three sovereigns era and become a core disciple, so that we can determine if Shun Feng is qualified to become a core disciple? Qin Gongyun suggested with a harmless smile on her face. The rules of the three ancient emperors? The blood demon trial? Sure, Jingtian understood when he heard this. During the three ancient emperors' era, the Heavenly Imperial Palace was at its peak. Therefore, if one wanted to become a core disciple of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, the rules were much stricter. Apart from the bloodline of the three sovereigns, one's cultivation had to be at the martial emperor realm. One also had to go to the blood demon continent to kill blood demons. Only by completing the blood demon trial could one become a core disciple. However, the Heavenly Imperial Palace was in danger, and the descendants of the three sovereigns were injured. As a result, the rules of the trial were removed. That's right. Qin Gongyan nodded with a smile. Elder Qing, do you mean to let Shun Feng go to the Blood Demon continent to kill blood demons at the Martial Emperor realm? Sun Shiyu asked calmly. Her words were meant to test Qin Gongyun. She suspected that the descendants of the 12 generals had followed her when she was in the 7 great martial worlds. Although Shun Feng is talented, his cultivation is only at the martial ancestor realm. It's impossible for him to kill blood demons at the martial emperor realm. Therefore, as long as he can kill 10 blood demons at the Nirvana realm, he will pass the trial. If that's the case, I don't think the other elders will have any objections, right? Qin Gongyun said to the other elders. The elders of the 12 generals had already discussed this matter, and they naturally nodded in agreement. Shen Feng, what do you think? A faint smile appears on Sun Shiyu's face as she looks at Qin Yu. Qin Yu had killed a rank 3 martial emperor during the battle in the Divine Moon Imperial Tomb. Although he had borrowed the power of the rank 2 contracted puppet, he was still a martial emperor. That was enough to show that Qin Yu's strength was enough to crush ordinary Nirvana realm martial ancestors. As long as he didn't encounter a high-level Nirvana realm martial ancestor, the Blood Demon trial shouldn't be dangerous for Qin Yu. If Qin Gongyun wanted to use this to prevent Qin Yu from becoming a core disciple, she would probably end up with nothing. I don't seem to have a choice. Qin Yu shrugged. Although Qin Yu said that, he wasn't unwilling. Qin Yu knew about the Blood Demon continent. That was a rather dangerous place for him right now. However, it was the best place for the Skeleton Ghost King. Qin Yu had already planned to go to the Blood Demon continent before he came to the spiritual state. Now it was a good opportunity for him to go there. Let's do it. Sun Shiyu nodded and agreed to Qin Gongyun's suggestion. Her decisiveness surprised Qin Gongyun and the other elders who were descendants of battle generals. They subconsciously looked at Qin Yu. Why was Sun Shiyu so confident in Qin Yu's strength? After reaching the Nirvana realm, the strength of a martial ancestor would change. Even a Nirvana realm martial ancestor would be able to take on 2 ordinary 9th-level martial ancestors. Qin Yu was only at the 7th-level martial ancestor realm. Even if he had the inheritance of the 3 emperors, he shouldn't be able to surpass his cultivation by that much. The white-haired elder glanced at Sun Shiyu, Qin Gongyun, and the others. He ordered someone to prepare the teleportation formation to the Blood Demon continent. Although the Blood Demon trial had been cancelled, the Blood Demon continent was still a place where the disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Palace often went to train their strength. The teleportation formation had always been there. Shen Feng, no one will be watching you during the Blood Demon trial. However, the Heavenly Emperor Palace has a special method to detect the blood demons you killed. Therefore, don't use the power of your contracted spiritual puppet. After leaving the Ancestral Palace, Sun Shiyu explained the situation of the Blood Demon continent to Qin Yu. All right, Qin Yu didn't need to use the power of the Skeleton Ghost King to deal with ordinary Nirvana realm martial ancestors. When you go to the Blood Demon continent, apart from the blood demons, you have to be careful of the others. If you encounter any danger, crush this talisman immediately. Sun Shiyu gives Qin Yu an ancient rune jade talisman, reminding him with a hidden meaning. She wouldn't go to the Blood Demon continent for the sake of justice, but she still had to prepare the necessary measures. Chapter 306. Don't you think it's time for you to tell me your goal? Qin Yu took the jade talisman and asked. Today's events made him realize that the situation in the Sky Emperor Palace was more chaotic than he had imagined. The Sun and Sure bloodlines of the 3 sovereigns were clearly unable to control the descendants of the 12 war generals. Indeed, there might be people playing tricks in the dark during this trial on the Blood Demon continent. Qin Yu felt that he had to find out the reason for being involved in this trouble for no reason. Don't worry, I didn't bring you back with ill intentions. When you pass the trial and become a core disciple, I will tell you everything. Sun Shiyu said softly. Originally, he should have explained the matter to Qin Yu today. But because of the obstruction of the descendants of the 12 war generals, the Blood Demon trial had appeared out of nowhere. Qin Yu nodded slightly and didn't ask any more questions. Granny, it seems that Sun Shiyu is very confident in Shen Feng. Qin Zhu looked at Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu leaving the ancestral hall together and couldn't help but say to Qin Gongyan, "There's indeed something strange. It seems that we have to carry out the second plan." Qin Gongyan's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. She felt that Qin Yu was related to the prophecy of the three sovereigns. "I'll go prepare." Qin Zhu understood and left quietly. Sky Emperor Palace, Teleportation Hall. Buzz. After everything was ready, Qin Yu stepped into the teleportation array that connected to the Blood Demon continent. With a flash of light, Qin Yu immediately disappeared. After a moment of darkness, before Qin Yu opened his eyes, a strong smell of blood assaulted his nose. Roar. Then a roar like that of a wild beast sounded. With a bang, Qin Yu was sent flying several hundred meters away by a vast and enormous power. Qin Yu stabilized his body and looked around. He found that he was now in a blood-red world. The entire sky was blood-red, and the clouds seemed to be condensed from blood. The mountains and rivers seemed to have been dyed with blood, and the smell of blood was so strong that it made one dizzy. The beast that attacked Qin Yu was a 3 zhang tall, blood-red, demonic beast. That demonic beast was a Nirvana, third cycle martial ancestor. However, there wasn't the slightest bit of intelligence in his eyes, only a bloodthirsty color. This was a demonic beast that had been infected by the power of the blood demon. It had lost its intelligence and only had a bloodthirsty instinct. The blood demon continent was not in the 9 prefectures. It was in the void space. It was rumored that thousands of years ago, an invincible blood elementalist had appeared in the sky domain. However, he failed to break through the limit of the Emperor realm and lost his mind. He turned into a demon and wreaked havoc in the heaven domain. That calamity caused countless lives to be slaughtered in the 9 continents of the heaven domain and the 10,000 realms continent. Back then, the 10 strongest, unparalleled almighties of the heaven domain had joined forces to suppress the blood demon. After the blood demon fell, its flesh and blood scattered all over the heaven domain, corroding everything that its spirit. Left with no choice, the sovereign of the heaven domain took action and directly separated this area from the heaven domain. This was the origin of the blood demon continent. Originally, the venerable sovereigns of the heaven domain could only be destroyed and sent to the blood demon continent. However, the power of the blood demon in this continent was too strong. No matter how many times it was shattered, it would gather again. Over time, the venerable sovereigns of the heaven domain no longer cared about the blood demon continent. Anyway, the blood demon had been completely destroyed and could not be resurrected. However, the blood demons that were born from the power of the blood demon on the blood demon continent. Those top forces would often send experts to eliminate the powerful blood demons. Because of this, almost all the blood demons at the martial emperor realm on the blood demon continent were wiped out. This continent, which was full of danger, gradually became a place for many great forces to train their disciples. Roar. The bloodthirsty demonic beast stared at Qin Yu and let out a roar. It turned into a blood-red light and pounced on Qin Yu, as if it wanted to tear Qin Yu apart and devour him. Qin Yu stood in place and did not move at all. Pucci. Just as the demonic beast was about to pounce on him, a white light flashed in the air and pierced through the demonic beast's forehead. However, no blood splattered out. It was the skeleton ghost king who had made a move and devoured the demonic beast's blood. "You can cultivate here for the time being," Qin Yu said. The bloodthirsty demonic beast was only corroded by the power of the blood demon. It was not a blood demon. To Qin Yu, killing it was of no use at all. "This is a good place." The skeleton ghost king opened its arms, and a look of intoxication appeared on its hideous face. The power of the blood demon on the blood demon continent can affect your mind. Don't get too addicted, Qin Yu reminded. Don't worry. Although I have merged with this emperor's body, when I absorb the blood, I will separate them. I will separate the ghost from the emperor's body, so there won't be any effect. The skeleton ghost king said. Qin Yu nods. With a flash, he flies away to look for Shuemo. The skeleton ghost king's body flashed and disappeared into the void. After flying for half a day, Yu finally encountered a blood demon after killing dozens of demonic beasts. The blood demon was formed by pure blood and the power of the blood demon. It had no form and was a spiritual body that could transform into anything. It was like a fish in water on the blood demon continent. Cultivators of the same level would not be a match for the blood demon. The blood devil that Yu had encountered had already taken on human form. Its facial features were even faintly visible. Unfortunately, its cultivation was only at the 9th level martial progenitor realm. It was just short of the Nirvana martial progenitor realm that the heavenly imperial palace had requested. Whoosh! Yu was not interested in fighting. However, the blood demon pounced toward him with a gust of bloody wind. His speed was so fast that it was like a graceful swan. In a flash, he had arrived in front of Yu. Its human form immediately turned into a bloody wave that tried to devour Yu. Sizzle! Yu threw out a palm, and golden flames burned in his palm. It was the golden heaven incinerating flame. The moment the bloody wave came into contact with the golden heaven incinerating flame, black smoke was emitted. It was quickly burned. The power of the two was not on the same level. The power of the blood demon belonged to the evil Tao. The golden heaven incinerating flame was a martial skill of the dragon tribe. The power of the blood demon was suppressed when the two met. However, the blood demon was still able to fight back after being suppressed by the golden heaven incinerating flame. As the bloody mist rolled, a blurry seal was formed on the blood demon's body. The aura of the seal was rather mysterious. That's interesting. Yu raised his eyebrows and waved his right hand. A godly glow appeared as a fiery ancient bell over 10 zhang wide descended from the sky and trapped the blood demon. Ancient godly weapon, the Tao incinerating godly bell. Dong! The godly bell let out a long chime as a faint purple godly flame was ignited. Its power was enhanced by the golden heaven incinerating flame. The blood demon let out a sharp cry before it turned into a bloody mist and dissipated. Only an inch-wide bloody mark was left behind. Yu withdrew the Tao incinerating godly bell and summoned the bloody mark. Within the crimson mark, there was a vast and boundless blood demon power. If he was not mistaken, the bloody mark was most likely the blood demon's origin force. If it continued to grow, it would be able to form the heart of the blood demon. In other words, the blood demon had the potential to rank up to the martial monarch realm. Unfortunately, its intelligence had yet to be awakened. It only knew how to kill and had died in Yu's hands. Chapter 307. Yu retrieved the Crimson Imprint. He had no use for it, but it would serve as a great supplement for the Skeleton Phantom King. Following this, Yu stumbled into a few blood demons. However, their cultivations were not strong. They were all low-level blood demons in the Wushang realm. Only 2 of them had reached the Nirvana realm of the martial progenitor realm, which Yu easily sealed. Yu's current cultivation was at the 7th layer martial progenitor realm. He did not even need to use the heaven-battling Azure Dragon to deal with the Nirvana realm blood demons. He could easily crush them with the martial arts and secret techniques of the 3 martial emperors. Rumble! Yu, who was searching for the Nirvana realm blood demons, halted in his tracks and glanced at the crimson glow in the distance. In the distance, a giant crimson beam was fired into the sky. The crimson clouds covered a distance of over 10,000 li, shook the heavens and earth. Monarch realm aura? Yu was startled as he was about to take a look. He saw a figure flying toward him at a rapid pace. More precisely, it was fleeing for its life. The reason for that was because behind the figure, there were 3 streams of blood mist rushing toward them. They were 3 Nirvana realm blood demons, and judging from their auras, they were all in the advanced Nirvana realm. A cultivator? The person who was fleeing immediately flew toward Yu as if she had discovered Yu's presence. As she got closer, Yu took a closer look. The person being chased by the blood demons was a young woman. She was wearing a light blue martial robe. Her cultivation had reached the 9th cycle of the Nirvana realm. However, her aura was in a mess, indicating that she was severely injured. Seventh layer, martial progenitor realm. Sui Weqing initially thought she had stumbled into a savior. However, when he sensed Qin Yu's level of cultivation, he was disappointed. Her original escape route was also to the side. She did not continue to head toward Qin Yu. Qin Yu let out a smile. It seemed like this person was not a bad person, as she was not trying to divert the trouble away. However, Sui Weqing did not intend to lure the three blood devils over. However, Qin Yu did not intend to let them go. Along the way, the number of Nirvana blood devils they encountered was truly too few. There was no reason not to eat this fat meat that was already in his mouth. Boom! Sui Weqing, who had just changed her position, suddenly felt a vast divine might descend. She turned around and saw a purple flame divine bell that was 100 feet long flying towards her. The three blood devils that were chasing after her were immediately enveloped by the purple flame divine bell and let out sharp screams. With a flash of light, a figure covered in golden flames charged into the purple flame divine bell. As the dazzling divine light radiated, Sui Weqing discovered something. The seventh layer martial progenitor, whom she had underestimated, had killed the three blood demons in the blink of an eye. His actions were clean and efficient, making her feel as if she had seen a martial emperor expert. Which force is this genius from? Sui Weqing stopped. Her eyes were filled with shock as she sized up Qin Yu. Qin Yu did not seem to be older than her. However, he actually possessed such a terrifying ability to fight enemies above his level. This was simply too shocking. If Qin Yu had a cultivation of the 9 nirvana cycles of the martial progenitor realm like her, Sui Weqing would not be so shocked. However, Qin Yu's cultivation was only at the 7th layer martial progenitor realm. In terms of cultivation alone, he was significantly weaker than her. However, his strength was on par with hers. After sealing those three blood devils, Qin Yu dispels the purple flame divine bell and raises his head to look at the distant horizon. Although the aura emitted by the crimson beam had yet to reach the martial monarch realm, it did not seem to be too far away. It was most likely that the blood devils were evolving. Wait, don't tell me you're going there? As Qin Yu was about to make his move, Sui Weqing blurted out, "Do you know what that crimson beam is?" Qin Yu's figure halted as he glanced at Sui Weqing. Sui Weqing, since he had fled in that direction, there was a high chance that he knew something about it. Furthermore, her injuries should have something to do with that blood-colored beam of light. Otherwise, with her cultivation of the 9 nirvana cycles of the martial progenitor realm, she would not have been chased by 3 7th-layer nirvana cycles of the 9 nirvana cycles. Since you've helped me, I'll give you a piece of advice. There's a blood devil's heart being born there. You're about to reach the martial monarch realm. Although you're not weak, you'd better not go there. Sui Weqing reminded him. As I thought, Qin Yu no longer paid attention to Sui Weqing. With a flash, he flew toward the soaring blood pillar. Although it was difficult for the blood devils to gain intelligence, once they reached the martial monarch realm, their intelligence would be on par with humans. Therefore, once the blood devils reached the martial monarch realm, they would avoid human cultivators. On the blood devil continent, it was extremely rare to see a martial monarch realm blood devil. This was because the blood devil's heart in the martial monarch realm blood devil was an extremely rare divine medicine. Many rare and precious emperor pills required the blood devil's heart as a catalyst. Therefore, martial monarchs would often come to the blood devil continent to hunt martial monarch realm blood devils. This directly made the already rare martial monarch realm blood devils even rarer. Qin Yu was not interested in the blood devil's heart or the divine medicine. Instead, it was the blood devil's heart that was beneficial to the skeleton ghost king. It was as good as absorbing the blood chi of a martial monarch. Now that they were in the spiritual state, the skeleton ghost king's martial monarch realm cultivation had to be improved as soon as possible. Sayu, I shouldn't have told you. Seeing Qin Yu fly away immediately after hearing the news, Sui Weqing was speechless. Wasn't he a little too confident in his own strength? One must know that even with her cultivation, she was still seriously injured. No matter how strong Qin Yu was, could he deal with a blood devil that was about to reach the martial monarch realm? Shaking her head, Su Yuqing withdrew her gaze and looked around. Then, she entered a crimson mountain to recover from her injuries. Whoosh! Qin Yu, who was flying at high speed, arrived in front of the crimson light pillar in a few breaths' time. In front of him was a vast sea of blood that stretched as far as the eye could see. At this moment, the crimson water in the sea of blood was swirling wildly around the gigantic crimson light pillar. The entire sea of blood had turned into a huge whirlpool. Within the blood-colored light pillar, there was a huge blood-colored ball of light. It was a vast and boundless ball of light. An unfathomable and terrifying aura spread out and swept across the land. A smile appeared on Qin Yu's face. If the skeleton Ghost King was not by his side, it would be difficult for him to deal with a martial monarch realm blood devil. However, the blood devil had just reached the martial monarch realm, and its foundation was not stable yet. Therefore, it was not as difficult to deal with a martial monarch realm blood devil. Puff! Puff! When Qin Yu flew above the sea of blood was broken apart. One after another, crimson silhouettes pounced toward Qin Yu. Those were martial progenitor realm blood devils that were at the peak of the Nirvana realm. There were dozens of them, and they were charging at him menacingly. Great! With a thought, a divine light flashed and filled the land. Qin Yu executed the three sovereign super skill. At the same time, the spiritual array disc in Qin Yu's left hand trembled. Mysterious spiritual inscriptions merged with the surrounding space and turned into a spiritual array inscription that restricted the land. Murderous aura surged, and it was shocking. Chapter 308. These blood demons were significantly stronger than the three Nirvana realm blood demons that Qin Yu had slain previously. Apart from their outstanding cultivations, the auras of these blood demons vaguely resonated with the blood ocean. It was as if they were able to control the power of the blood ocean. Bang bang bung as expected, the bloody mist on the blood demons exploded, causing the entire blood ocean to vibrate vigorously. A giant bloody wave over 100,000 zhang tall erupted like a volcano, crashing toward Qin Yu. The force had surpassed the limit of the martial progenitor realm and was close to the martial monarch realm. Roar! With a thought, the spiritual runes that had merged with the space around Qin Yu appeared. They transformed into a vivid shinran over 100 zhang long around Qin Yu's figure. The shinran formed by the spiritual runes was only 100 zhang tall. However, the might it emitted was not at all inferior to the might of the tens of thousands of blood waves. It was one of the formations that Qin Yu had prepared before coming to the spiritual state after his cultivation had reached the 7th layer martial progenitor realm. The ancient battle dragon formation. The Shinran over 100 zhang long let out a roar and lunged forward in an imperious manner. The giant bloody wave collided with the Shinran. An earth-shattering destructive power exploded at this moment, causing the entire sky to tremble violently. The Nirvana realm blood demons hiding in the bloody waves seemed to be aware that the ancient battle dragon formation was not easy to deal with. One by one, they charged out from the crimson waves. With boundless might, they charged toward Qin Yu's body. Fire God Talisman, appear. Qin Yu remained fearless as he performed a hand seal with his hands, causing a mystical glow to flicker. An ancient fire talisman was formed and flew into the sky. In the next instant, flames that were as vast as the sea poured out in torrents with the power to burn the heavens and extinguish the earth. More than half of the blood ocean was covered in flames. The Nirvana realm blood demons that were charging toward Qin Yu were instantly devoured by the flames. A sizzling sound could be heard from the blood ocean. A huge area of the blood ocean was burned by the flames, causing a black mist to rise. Die! Qin Yu stretched out his right hand. Divine light condensed in his palm, and the sky splitter spear appeared. Taking a step in the air, Qin Yu charged into the sea of flames and unleashed killing moves one after another, fiercely fighting with those Nirvana realm blood devils. Although those blood devils were spiritual bodies condensed from blood chi, they didn't have physical bodies. However, the fire deity talisman and the golden heaven incinerating flame were innately effective against them. On the other hand, Qin Yu relied on the indestructible stone emperor seal and the dragon god tyrannical body. Even though he was fighting one against many, he was not at all inferior. In fact, it could even be said that he was completely suppressing the blood demons. Pung pung pung. It wasn't long before the Nirvana Realm Blood Devils were incinerated by Qin Yu. When the last Nirvana Realm Blood Demon was killed, the incinerated waves of blood suddenly exploded and turned into blood water that scattered back into the sea of blood. However, Qin Yu did not disperse the ancient battle dragon formation. Instead, he continued to set up the formation. Only after the blood-colored light pillar and the blood sea within a radius of 10,000 miles were filled with ancient spiritual rune formations. Only then did Qin Yu stop, because at this moment, Qin Yu could clearly feel that the terrifying violent fluctuation in the blood-colored light pillar was becoming more and more intense. That violent fluctuation had already appeared when Qin Yu was killing those Nirvana Realm Blood Devils. However, this violent feeling had clearly reached its limit. Needless to say, Qin Yu also knew that it was the Blood Devil that was transforming in the blood-colored light pillar. It had sensed the danger of the killing formation he had set up. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Qin Yu flies up high. Only when he is level with that huge mass of blood does he stop in midair. Then, Qin Yu pointed his finger. Mysterious ancient runes continued to gather and were inserted into the blood-colored light pillar. After 2 breaths of time, a deafening explosion sounded. A 10,000-foot wide area of destruction appeared on the blood-colored light pillar. Human, you deserve to die. The moment the blood-colored light pillar exploded, an intermittent thought that contained monstrous killing intent spread out from the blood-colored light pillar. The blood-colored ball of light was also affected, and countless cracks appeared on the surface of the ball of light. Boom! In the next moment, a huge blood-colored claw grabbed at Qin Yu from the blood-colored light pillar. This blood-colored claw contained a majestic and invincible aura that seemed to be able to crush heaven and earth. Dragon capturing claw. Qin Yu did not dodge at all. After the sky splitter spear in his right hand dissipated into divine light, it transformed into a lifelike dragon claw. Even the dragon scales were flowing with divine light and mighty power. As the dragon capturing claw struck the void, a dragon roar came from Qin Yu's body. Vast and majestic battle dragon, true energy erupted from the 40-branch dragon veins in his body. Boom! The 2 claws met and the void shook violently. Faintly, tiny spatial cracks spread out from where the 2 claws collided. Qin Yu's body shook violently as a terrifying force exploded from the blood-colored claw. Even the indestructible ancient emperor's seal trembled and showed signs of collapsing. Thump! Thump! Qin Yu's feet stomped on the ground continuously. A visible blood-colored ripple exploded from the soles of his feet. This was the force of the blood-colored claw being released from Qin Yu's body. The timing is perfect. Qin Yu, who took the blow from the blood-colored claw, smiled even more brightly. The blood demon's cultivation had indeed reached the martial emperor realm. However, it had just reached the martial emperor realm, and its foundation was not stable yet. Therefore, Qin Yu was able to block the attack of the blood-colored claw without even using the azure dragon battling the heavens. Come out! Qin Yu flicked his left hand, and a flaming ancient talisman shot toward the blood-colored light pillar that was filled with cracks. It was the fire god talisman. At this moment, Qin Yu's face turned pale and weak. When the fire god talisman came into contact with the blood-colored light pillar, it immediately turned into rolling flames and burned fiercely. The fire was so fierce that it instantly covered the entire blood-colored light pillar. There was also a shocking flame that was crazily drilling into the light pillar. Sizzling sounds could be heard incessantly. The blood-colored claw moved violently and crazily. Blood mist surged as it tried to extinguish the flames of the fire god talisman. Unfortunately, the fire god talisman, was a divine flame created by the famous fire god heavenly exalted from the primordial age. It was condensed from thousands of fire seeds in the universe. It was said that the heavenly sovereign fire god had once used the fire god talisman to burn thousands of continents in an instant. Its divine power was so strong that it was definitely one of the top divine weapons of the fire path in the history of the sky domain. Moreover, this divine flame was like a maggot attached to a bone. Once it came into contact with something, it would not be extinguished until it was completely burned. The only way to do so would be to disperse it with an even stronger power. Boom! Indeed, after burning for close to 10 breaths, a blurry figure could be vaguely seen in the blood-colored light pillar. The blood-colored light pillar directly exploded. The surging divine flame on it, accompanied by the blood-colored light, splashed in all directions. Finally, the blood demon that had advanced to the martial emperor realm appeared in front of Chinyu. It was 10 feet tall and had the appearance of tiger. It had 2 heads, but its facial features were similar to that of a human. There was also a pair of blood-colored wings on its back. As the blood demon appeared, a berserk aura that broke through the ages suddenly erupted. The wind and clouds changed color, and the sky became dark and oppressive. Although the blood demon had just advanced to the martial emperor realm, the berserk aura on its body was earth-shattering. Chapter 309. How dare you disturb me? You deserve to die. The blood demon with a human head and a tiger body spoke in human language. Both of its faces were filled with murderous intent. There was also a bloodthirsty glint in its eyes. It looked as if it couldn't wait to tear Chinyu into pieces. Since it wasn't easy for you to cultivate, I can spare your life if you hand over the heart of the blood demon. Chinyu chuckled and said indifferently, "Arrogant." The blood demon was enraged. The blood-red wings on its back flapped, stirring up a violent blood-red wind as it charged towards Chinyu. There was also a destructive force hidden in the violent blood-red wind. What was surprising was that the destructive force directly merged into the void and was difficult to detect. The two of them, one in the light and one in the dark, attacked one after another. Space-type mystique. Chinyu was a little surprised. The blood demon, on the other hand, had comprehended an extraordinary ability. However, compared to the Dragon Soul's space-time mystique, the blood demon's space-time mystique, the difference was more than 100,000 miles. Buzz, buzz. Chinyu opened his hands, and a mysterious formation ripple spread out. Like a butterfly effect, the formation ripples appeared on Chinyu's body. Ancient runes appeared in the void of the blood sea, forming a monstrous formation. It covered the sky. The entire ancient formation shone with dazzling divine light, dazzling and bright. If one looked down from the sky, the formation looked like a huge ancient cauldron. Chinyu was in the center of the ancient cauldron, and the blood demon had already entered it. The ancient sky-burying cauldron. This was an ancient killing array, and it could also be said to be an ancient divine weapon. This was formed by Chinyu's All Heavens War Emperor transformation and the ancient killing formation, and its power could destroy heaven and earth. Rumble. The blood demon's violent blood-red wind and destructive force collided with the ancient sky-burying cauldron. The collision of the two caused a shockwave that shook the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The entire blood sea boiled and exploded, and the waves drowned the earth. In the midst of the battle, Chinyu's body shook violently before returning to normal. He blocked the blood demon's attack. This astonished the blood demon, who had advanced to martial emperor. He found it hard to believe. It was aware of the difference between the martial progenitor realm and the martial monarch realm. But now, Chinyu actually ignored the difference between the two of them, the difference between heaven and earth. Someone is approaching. At this time, the Dragon Soul's voice came from the divine dragon Ancient Seal, reminding Chinyu. Ancient cauldron buries the sky. Chinyu's eyes narrowed slightly. He let out a low growl and raised his hands in the air. The huge formation that looked like an ancient cauldron suddenly flipped in the sky. Chinyu and the blood demon were both shrouded in it. making it impossible for others to see what was going on inside. The moment it flipped through the air, the ancient runes that covered thousands of miles all gathered inside the ancient sky-burying cauldron. The ancient sky-burying cauldron also rapidly shrank, becoming 1,000 feet in size. Roar. A dragon's roar could be heard from the cauldron. The azure dragon seal spread out from Qin Yu's body, covering his limbs and bones and penetrating his flesh and organs. At this moment, Qin Yu's aura immediately soared rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he had reached the limit of the martial progenitor realm. With the help of the ancient sky-burying cauldron formation, Qin Yu's aura was no weaker than the blood demons. Ew. How did you? The blood demon was even more astonished and in disbelief. However, Qin Yu did not give it any time to react. With a flicker, the godly spear pierced through the sky. A long gap was torn open in the sky, from which a pitch-black, chaotic ripple of space was emitted. Roar. The blood demon's soul shuddered as it sensed the danger of death. It let out a primordial roar as a destructive aura gathered, causing its aura to skyrocket. 9 Serenities, Purgatory. Heaven-devouring dragon seal. Qin Yu charged forward and executed the 2 mystical abilities of the dragon tribe. A vast aura swept across the place, forcefully shattering the blood demon's attack and its defense. If you want my blood demon's heart, exchange it with your life. The blood demon, whose body was being destroyed by the terrifying power, let out a desperate and deranged cry. The sea of blood within the sea of blood penetrated the void and merged into its body, crazily suppressing it. Qin Yu's eyes narrowed. The blood demon wanted to self-destruct its blood demon's heart. Sealing divine light. Qin Yu naturally would not let it succeed. He struck out with his palm. A divine light that could topple mountains and overturn seas erupted, suppressing heaven and earth. The blood demon's berserk blood demon's power was directly sealed in the void. The sea of blood that penetrated the void was also condensed. It was as if time had stopped. It could not move at all. Puchi. Qin Yu's left hand formed a claw, and the blood demon's body was pierced. A palm-sized blood-colored heart was pulled out. Although the heart seemed to be condensed from blood, it was crystal clear like a gem. It faintly flickered with a blood-colored light. That blood-colored light did not have the slightest smell of blood. Instead, it had a dreamy beauty that made one feel intoxicated. That was the blood demon's heart. As the blood demon's heart was taken away, the sealed blood demon immediately turned into a bloody mist and disappeared from the world. The blood-colored light pillar that shot into the sky and the sea of blood quickly dried up. Soon, they turned into a bloody mist and disappeared. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of figures flew over from the distant horizon. These people were all young men and women. They did not look very old, but their cultivations were not weak. The weakest among them was a Nirvana 5th Revolution martial progenitor. They were all very talented, judging from their clothes and symbols. It was clear that they were from 3 different factions. This what happened before the dozens of people could get close to the gradually disappearing blood-colored light pillar. When they saw that the sea of blood was rapidly drying up, they were all astonished. A sea of blood that stretched as far as the eye could see was drying up. This scene was very visually impactful. The blood demon's aura disappeared. Now, what's that? A cold-looking woman in blue with a green leaf embroidered on her collar frowned. She looked into the distance at the rapidly disappearing blood-colored light pillar. Her eyes flickered with a faint blue light. She saw the sky burying ancient cauldron formation as the blood-colored light pillar disappeared. Could that be an ancient godly weapon? The sky burying ancient cauldron? A shocked voice was heard. The one who spoke was a muscular young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He was wearing a red robe with a fire wolf carved on the back of the robe. He recognized the sky burying ancient cauldron. The moment these words came out, a commotion broke out among the surrounding cultivators, all of them shocked. They had heard of very few sky burying ancient cauldrons. However, the words ancient godly weapon were enough to tempt them. Godly weapons were not divine weapons. Even emperor weapons could not be called godly weapons. In the 9 prefectures of the heaven domain, only the immortal sacred grounds, supreme orthodoxies, and ancient divine dynasties had ancient godly weapons. Now, an ancient godly weapon had appeared here. This naturally shocked them. They felt that they had encountered a heaven-defying opportunity. Chapter 310. That's not right. There's a fluctuation of divine runes. That's not the real heaven-burying cauldron. Someone has created the heaven-burying cauldron with the runes. Among the 3 factions, a handsome young man in a blue robe was surrounded by a gust of wind. He blurted out in astonishment after seeing the ancient formation covering the sky. A formation that could create an ancient godly weapon was not something ordinary people could do. The person who had set up the ancient formation was most likely no ordinary person. Does that mean the blood demon that has ranked up to the martial monarch realm has fallen into someone else's hands? The cultivators of the 3 factions reacted with different expressions. It was extremely lucky to stumble into a martial monarch realm blood demon on the blood demon continent. It was extremely rare for a martial progenitor realm blood demon to rank up to the martial monarch realm. After all, they could not handle a real martial monarch realm blood demon. However, they were confident that they could handle a martial progenitor realm blood demon that was trying to rank up to the martial monarch realm. Therefore, they had teamed up. To their surprise, someone had beaten them to it. Could it be a martial monarch realm expert? Just as these dozen or so people were having doubts in their hearts, a voice suddenly rang out. The heaven-burying cauldron turned into a series of mysterious runes and disappeared into the air. Following that, Qin Yu's figure appeared. Martial progenitor realm? The dozen or so young geniuses were slightly taken aback when they saw this scene. They did not expect the person who had appeared to only possess a 7th-layer martial progenitor realm cultivation. Such a cultivation could be considered the weakest in the blood demon continent. Although there were no martial progenitor realm blood demons on the blood demon continent, there were many of them. It could be said to be extremely dangerous. Even the martial emperors of the human tribe would occasionally fall. Therefore, even if the factions had sent their disciples here to train themselves, their cultivations would at least rank up to the nirvana martial progenitor realm. It was extremely rare to see a 7th-layer martial progenitor realm cultivator in the middle region of the blood demon continent. As a matter of fact, it had completely exceeded their expectations. Besides, how could a 7th-layer martial progenitor realm cultivator defeat a blood demon that was about to rank up to the martial monarch realm? Understand now. The blood demon must have failed in its transformation. That's why he was able to succeed. A young man with a cultivation of the 7th-layer nirvana realm seemed to have realized something as he spoke. Upon hearing this, the other young geniuses nodded in agreement. This was the only possibility that a 7th-level martial progenitor would be able to deal with the blood demon, who was about to break through to the martial emperor realm. He has the heart of the blood demon. At this moment, the blue-clothed ice-cold woman, the red-robed robust youth, and the azure-robed handsome youth all appeared. They had all noticed the heart of the blood demon in Qin Yu's hand. For some reason, Qin Yu was currently staring at the heart of the blood demon. It was as if he was trying to discern whether the heart of the blood demon was real or fake. However, this caused a fiery expression to appear in their eyes. They had joined forces to come here for the blood demon's heart. Now that there was a ready-made blood demon's heart in front of them, they would naturally be moved. Thinking of this, the 3 of them looked at each other and led their people to fly towards Qin Yu. Seal ripples. At this moment, Qin Yu was indeed looking at the blood demon's heart in his hand. However, he was not trying to discern whether the heart of the blood demon was real or fake. He had discovered half of a mysterious ancient artifact seal in the heart of the blood demon. The ancient artifact seal was emitting a faint ripple, which caught Qin Yu's attention. He could sense a unique sealing force from the ripple. If Qin Yu had not obtained the succession of the 3 martial emperors and comprehended the sealing light, he would not have noticed it. At this moment, Qin Yu slightly raised his head and saw the group of people flying toward him in 3 different groups. Looking at the situation, it seemed like they were about to surround him. Qin Yu faintly looked in a certain direction. Then, he flipped his right hand. After storing the heart of the blood demon into his Sumeru ring, Qin Yu calmly glanced at the group of people. Needless to say, these people were here for the heart of the blood demon. However, these people were not enough to catch Qin Yu's attention. They were trying to kill me with a borrowed knife. In the dragon god ancient seal, the dragon's soul sneered. With his perception, he naturally discovered that someone had been hiding in the dark all this time. It was just that he had not revealed himself. This trip to the blood demon continent is indeed not peaceful. A chill flashed in the depths of Qin Yu's eyes. Although he had not seen the person hiding in the dark, Qin Yu instinctively felt it. That person was definitely related to the Sky Emperor Palace. Thinking of the ancient talisman that Sun Xiu gave him when he entered the blood demon continent, Qin Yu did not crush it. He felt that it was better to investigate the matter of the Sky Emperor Palace himself. I am Dao Songhai, a core disciple of the Golden Feather sect of the spiritual state. What is the name of the stone platform? At this moment, when those dozen-plus people were several tens of feet away from Qin Yu, they all stopped in a tacit understanding. The handsome young man in green stepped out with a gentle smile and cupped his fists towards Qin Yu. The Golden Feather sect was located in the southern region of the spiritual state. It was also one of the ancient great forces of the spiritual state. Shen Feng, northern region of the spiritual state, Sky Emperor Palace. Qin Yu said lightly, Sky Emperor Palace? Shen Feng? Dao Songhai raised his eyebrows in surprise. He naturally knew about the Sky Emperor Palace that was famous in the spiritual state. He originally thought that with Qin Yu's cultivation level and alone here, he would not have any background. He did not expect that he would be from the Sky Emperor Palace. However, even if Qin Yu was from the Sky Emperor Palace, he did not care. The 2 royal bloodlines and the 12 royal bloodlines of the Sky Emperor Palace did not have the surname Shun. It seemed that Qin Yu was not an important person in the Sky Emperor Palace. Brother Chen Feng dared to come here alone to train. Such courage is truly admirable. My Xinyu Mountain likes to make friends with heroes like you. The brawny young man in red robes laughed heartily. In fact, he was inquiring about Qin Yu's situation. He wanted to see if Qin Yu had any elders with him. Xinyu Mountain was from the Xianyan Manor. The Xianyan Manor was also a top force from the southern region of the spiritual state. It had an extraordinary foundation and many strong masters. Since I'm here to train, I naturally came alone. Qin Yu smiled faintly, as if he did not notice the intentions of these people. You were the one who killed that blood demon that just advanced, right? Hearing this, the cold woman in blue could not help but ask. Her name was Murong Shuiqing, a member of the Murong family in the Greenwood Ridge. The Greenwood Ridge was located in the western region of the spiritual state. Although it was named as a ridge, it was actually hundreds of thousands of miles wide. The Murong family was the strongest force in the Greenwood Ridge. That's right. Qin Yu nodded. The heart of the blood demon is very important to me. Can you get it to me in exchange? Murong Shuiqing said. Exchange? Qin Yu looked at Murong Shuiqing and smiled. The heart of the blood demon was not only a true divine medicine, but also extremely rare. The rarer something was, the more valuable it was. A heart of the blood demon was equivalent to several emperor-grade spiritual herbs. This Murong Shuiqing actually wanted to trade? Could it be that she could take out a few emperor-grade spear herbs? Chapter 3:11. I have 3 2,000-year-old sacred herbs in my hand. How about exchanging them for your heart of the blood demon? If you agree, you will be an honored guest of the Murong family. When you come to the western region in the future, I will personally entertain you. Seeing Qin Yu's appearance, Murong Shuiqing thought that Qin Yu was moved by her. She flipped her fair palm, and 2 sacred herbs appeared in her hand. A rich and exotic fragrance immediately filled the air, making people feel refreshed and energized. Dao Songhai and Xin Yueshan looked a little strange, and they looked at each other secretly. You want to exchange 2 sacred herbs for the heart of the blood demon? Do you think I'm stupid? Qin, you didn't even look at the 2 sacred herbs. Did this woman think that she could bewitch him just because she was a little pretty? Then tell me, what do you want in exchange? Murong Shuiqing's expression changed slightly, and a gloomy look flashed in her eyes. She was born a proud daughter of the heavens, and had never been treated like this. But thinking of the heart of the blood demon, she still suppressed it. Of course, if Dao Songhai and Xin Yueshan weren't still here, she was afraid that Qin Yu would be recruited by them. She would have fallen out with them long ago. So why would she talk nonsense with Qin Yu? Murong Shuiqing's thoughts were actually the same as Dao Songhai and Xin Yueshan. With so many people present, if they were to kill Qin Yu, they would definitely be killed. It was equivalent to having their weakness in the hands of the other party. Even if the forces behind them were all top forces in the spiritual state, they were still inferior to the Sky Imperial Palace. Of course, the forces behind them weren't afraid of the Sky Imperial Palace, but they couldn't represent their respective forces. Therefore, they all wanted the heart of the blood demon, but they didn't want to become enemies with the Sky Imperial Palace. That was why they were in a deadlock here. Little did they know that Qin Yu was deliberately wasting time with them because he had a plan in mind. 10 imperial-grade spiritual herbs, or equally rare divine herbs. Qin Yu said lightly, 10 imperial-grade spiritual herbs? You really dare to ask for so much. Murong Shuiqing snorted coldly. Although the blood demon's heart was rare and precious, it was definitely not worth 10 emperor-grade spiritual herbs. Not to mention that she didn't have any emperor-grade spiritual herbs on her. Even if she did, she wouldn't trade them. If that's the case, then I have nothing to talk about. Goodbye. Qin Yu waved his hand, as if preparing to leave. You can leave, but the heart of the Bloodseeker must stay. Murong Shuiqing waved her sleeve, and a 10-meter-long vine appeared in the air, blocking Qin Yu's path. The young men and women of the Murong family all activated their true yuan, and cold, killing intent surrounded Qin Yu. What? Are you planning to rob me? Qin Yu stopped in his tracks, but his expression did not change. Saber young master, Xin young master, you can't just watch and let him take away the heart of the blood demon, right? Of course, if you don't mind, I won't be the bad guy. Murong Shuiqing sneered and said to Dao Songhai and Xin Yueshan, even if she snatched the heart of the blood demon from Qin Yu's hands, Dao Songhai and Xin Yueshan would definitely not let her leave with the heart of the blood demon. Therefore, she naturally had to drag the 2 of them down with her. No matter who got the heart of the blood demon in the end, they had to have a share in this matter. You've seen the situation before you. Let me give you a piece of advice. If you don't want to die, then hand over the heart of the blood demon. That divine herb isn't something you can touch. Dao Songhai and Xin Yueshan could only step forward when they saw the situation. There were no cultivators in the surroundings, so it was the best time to make a move. But if they let Qin Yu leave, then there would be more trouble if they wanted to make a move. The item is with me. If you want to take it away, then it depends on whether you have the ability to do so. Let me remind you that once you make a move, there's no turning back. Qin Yu chuckled. He had a carefree expression and did not put them in his eyes at all. You overestimate yourself. Dao Songhai and Shui Yueshan were filled with murderous intent when Qin Yu did not know what was good for him. Anyone with more than 10 of them would be able to crush Qin Yu. Qin Yu was simply courting death. Whoosh! Before Qin Yu finished speaking, the green vine lying in the air moved like a huge python. It was extremely fast. With a flash of cyan light, it has bound Qin Yu. Crack! But in the next moment, a golden light flickered and a huge golden pair of scissors appeared and cut down. The green vine was directly cut into several pieces and lost all vitality. It withered like a piece of dead wood. Golden serpent scissors, Shui Yueshan exclaimed. He recognized the golden serpent scissors that Qin Yu had created this time. Could this be the rumored secret technique of the Sky Emperor Palace that can create countless divine weapons? Dao Songhai's eyes flashed. First, it was the ancient sky burying cauldron. Now it was the golden serpent scissors. It reminded him of a rumor about the Sky Emperor Palace that he had once heard. Did this mean that Qin Yu was from the two royal bloodlines of the Sky Emperor Palace? However, the surname Shun was indeed not among the two royal bloodlines and the 12 royal bloodlines of the Sky Emperor Palace. It could not be that Qin Yu had purposely used a fake name. Humph. The green vine's vitality was destroyed. Murong Shuiqing, who was connected to the green vine, groaned and her aura became slightly chaotic. That green vine was her contracted creature. Now that it was killed by Qin Yu, she would naturally suffer a backlash. Kill. Seeing this, the Murong clan's martial artists all attack with murderous intent, wanting to kill Qin Yu. Slash. Qin Yu's divine light flashed, and a clear tearing sound could be heard in the air. The Nirvana realm martial progenitors of the Murong clan were charging at him. They were cut at the waist like pieces of cloth. Blood and flesh splattered in the air. In an instant, all of the people from the Murong family were killed. How is this possible? Murong Shuiqing, whose carelessness had led to the destruction of the green vine, had her eyes open wide. She froze on the spot as if she had been struck by lightning. He had killed more than 10 Nirvana realm martial progenitors with a single attack. Even she, who had achieved the 9th cycle of the martial progenitor realm, could not do it. Was Qin Yu really a martial monarch? Crap, that's definitely not the strength of a martial progenitor. Could it be that he's a martial monarch realm expert, and his cultivation dropped after the battle with the blood demon? Dao, Songhai, Xian Yueshan, and the others could feel their hair standing on end, as if they had fallen into an icy cave. A 7th-layer martial progenitor could kill a Nirvana realm martial progenitor as easily as an ant. His strength had completely surpassed their imagination. At that instant, Qin Yu slightly raised his head with a cold grin. A bone-chilling aura was emitted from his body. Young Master Shenfeng, it's just a misunderstanding. We have no intention of stealing the heart of the blood demon. Dao, Songhai, Xian Yueshan, and the others shuddered as they blurted out. Even the way they addressed Qin Yu had changed. I've said it before, once the battle begins, there's no turning back. Qin Yu's cold voice could be heard. Before he could finish his sentence, ancient runes appeared in the sky, forming a giant killing formation. Chapter 312. Whoosh! The sky splitter spear in his hand changed, and Qin Yu charged out like a ferocious beast. Although Dao, Songhai, Xian Yueshan, and the others did not make a move, they had their killing intent. However, they also had the intention to kill Qin Yu. Qin Yu naturally would not let them off. Damn it, even if you're a martial emperor, you'll still have to pay a price to kill you. Dao Songhai and Xian Yueshan's faces changed. They did not expect Qin Yu to be so straightforward. He did not care about their background at all. Murong Shuiqing, who originally thought that she was going to die, suddenly had a glimmer of hope in her eyes. The three of them were Nirvana 9th refinement stage martial ancestors. They were just a step away from the martial emperor realm. If the three of them were to join hands, then even though Qin Yu's battle prowess was extraordinary, he would still have a chance. Bang! Bang! However, the result was a bucket of cold water poured over Murong Shuiqing's head. Qin Yu's fighting strength was enough to kill Nirvana realm martial ancestors easily. Now that he had set up a killing formation, Murong Shuiqing and the others were naturally no match for Qin Yu. In just a few breaths' time, everyone was blown apart, their souls dispersing. Say, you've been watching for so long. Isn't it time for you to show yourself? You're a martial emperor, after all. Aren't you lowering your status by being so sneaky? Qin Yu waved his hand, and Murong Shuiqing and the others turned into dust. Shortly after, Qin Yu raised his head and looked at the sky before him. You actually noticed me. You're not simple. As Qin Yu spoke, a voice sounded. A figure appeared in the sky without any warning. It was an unremarkable man. He was the type that no one would remember if he was thrown into a crowd. However, the aura that this man emitted was very shocking. He was a true martial emperor. Furthermore, his cultivation was a rank 2 martial emperor. The man crossed his arms and stood in the sky, looking at Chinyu indifferently. There was a trace of mockery in his eyes, like a cat playing with a mouse. I'll give you a chance. Tell me who sent you, and I can spare your life. Chinyu's expression didn't change at all because of the man's cultivation. When Chinyu was setting up the array to deal with the martial Emperor Realm Blood Demon, he had already noticed the man's arrival. Chinyu originally did not suspect the Sky Emperor Palace. After all, there were still martial emperors on the Blood Demon continent. However, that man had been hiding in the void ever since he arrived. Even after Chinyu killed the Blood Demon, he didn't appear. This made Chinyu even more concerned. Since they weren't here for the heart of the Blood Demon, naturally, they were here for him. Other than that, there was no other reason. When Chinyu was entangled with the disciples of the three sects, he was even more convinced of his theory. That man probably wanted to kill him with a borrowed knife and let the disciples of the three sects kill him. Unfortunately, he had underestimated Chinyu's strength. Spare my life? Haha, brat, you really overestimate yourself. That ordinary-looking man flew over in the air, as if he had heard an extremely funny joke, and laughed loudly. Buzz! Chinyu chuckled and didn't say a word. With a thought, the ancient array around him shook, and a circle of ripples that could be seen with the naked eye spread out in all directions. Wherever the ripples passed, spiritual inscriptions appeared and covered the void. The ancient sky-burying cauldron array that had dissipated gathered in the void once again. Chinyu had dispersed the ancient sky-burying cauldron array previously, but it was just a feint. His purpose was to confuse the martial emperor. I see. It seems that you have discovered me long ago. However, do you think that you can deal with a real martial emperor with this array? That unprepossessing man looked at Chinyu with a disdainful expression. A cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Did he think that he could deal with him just because he had used this array to kill a blood demon? How naive. I remember that the last guy who said that almost had his soul destroyed. Chinyu's expression was calm, as usual. Victory was in his hands. The man raised his eyebrows. Chinyu's expression didn't seem to be boasting. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but carefully examine the ancient sky-burying cauldron array. However, no matter how he looked at it, it was only a divine array. It could deal with a martial ancestor. However, it was impossible for it to deal with a martial emperor who had comprehended the great Tao of heaven and earth. Oh, that's right. His cultivation is even stronger than yours. He is a rank 3 martial emperor. The smile on Chinyu's face grew even wider. The person he was talking about was naturally the white-haired old man from the 10,000 Ghost Palace. If it wasn't for the fact that the rank 6 martial emperor Zhou Zhaotian had helped him that day, that white-haired old man would definitely end up with his soul scattered. What shameless boasting. Today, I will show you what a real martial emperor is. Hearing those words, the man laughed with disdain. There were 9 ranks of martial emperors. There was a huge gap between each rank. Chinyu actually said that he could kill a rank 3 martial emperor with a divine array. This was simply a fantasy. The man was certain that Chinyu was only scaring him. Rumble. After he finished speaking, a lightning sword appeared in the man's hand. Dense lightning revolved around it. He raised the lightning sword high up. As the lightning patterns on the sword flickered, surging black lightning clouds gathered in the sky. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, illuminating heaven and earth. A frightening lightning heavenly might was emitted, causing all living things to tremble. Unfortunately, if you had attacked earlier, you might have been able to escape. However, now, Chinyu stood where he was. He did not have the slightest intention of attacking. He merely looked at the man with an indifferent gaze. Heavenly lightning demon. The man's eyes were like lightning. His might was extraordinary. With a loud shout, he raised the lightning sword high up and slashed it at Chinyu. The sword slashed down. Within the layers of dark thunderclouds, a sky full of thunderbolts descended and gathered on the thunder sword. In an instant, the lightning sword became 300 meters long and surged with lightning might. At the tip of the lightning sword, there was a sinister and frightening lightning demon condensing. With boundless lightning might, it pounced at Qin Yu with bared fangs and brandished claws. This sword strike contained an unparalleled sword might and the destructive intent of lightning. Even if it was an ordinary martial emperor, it would most likely be killed by this sword strike. Bang! Just as the destructive lightning demon was about to hit Qin Yu's body, a white light flashed. It was as if a sea of blood had appeared in the sky, causing violent waves to appear. In an instant, the 300-meter-long lightning sword was destroyed. The lightning demon exploded into lightning that filled the sky. Who is it? The ordinary-looking man's face suddenly changed. The power of that fist aura was more than just a little stronger than his. He focused his gaze and saw a white figure appear in front of Qin Yu. It was a white skeleton. The skeleton's entire body flowed with divine light and emitted an aura of desolation. It was the skeleton ghost king. The reason why Qin Yu was talking nonsense with the disciples of the three sects was because he was waiting for the skeleton ghost king. He was stalling for time, waiting for the skeleton ghost king to arrive. With Qin Yu's battle strength, he could only protect himself if he encountered a true martial emperor. If he wanted to kill a martial emperor, he would need the help of the skeleton ghost king. That is a contracted spiritual puppet? A late-stage rank 3 martial emperor? Damn it! When the ordinary-looking man saw the skeleton ghost king's cultivation, his pupils shrank and his hair stood on end. Without thinking, he immediately turned around and prepared to escape. Buzz! 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 When Qin Yu saw this, the smile on his face grew wider. The runes on the formation trembled, and the ancient sky-burying cauldron formation turned into an ancient cauldron that sealed the surrounding area. The ordinary-looking man, who was preparing to escape, was immediately trapped in the ancient cauldron, unable to escape. Chapter 3:13. Boom! At this moment, the skeleton ghost king threw a punch. The mighty emperor's aura descended like a mountain, crushing the air until it exploded. The pale-faced man swung his sword with all his might. Lightning exploded like a river, trying to block the skeleton ghost king's punch. However, as the deafening explosion sounded, pitch-black spatial cracks appeared in the void. The man's divine weapon, Thunder Sword, was shattered by the destructive power. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts exploded, filling the sky. The skeleton ghost king's terrifying punch not only shattered the Thunder Sword, but also entered the man's body. The man's great Tao protective shield and divine armor were useless. They were as fragile as tofu. Pucci! The man suffered a fatal blow. His body trembled, and blood spurted out of his mouth. His aura became weak and chaotic. Even the great Tao energy in his body went berserk and went out of his control. Body escaped. When he saw the skeleton ghost king throw another destructive punch, he couldn't care less. The man didn't care about anything else and immediately released his sovereign soul, wanting to escape. Seal. However, right at this moment, Qin Yu suddenly attacked. As the void trembled, a mysterious and ancient fluctuation filled the void. It was a fluctuation that could seal everything in the world. The sovereign spirit that had left the man's body was directly sealed. Soul refining. Qin Yu, whose palm was covered in divine light, shouted. The sealing divine light seeped into the man's sovereign soul. Soon, Qin Yu obtained the man's memory. The man's origin was as Qin Yu had expected. He was one of the descendants of the 12 generals of the heavenly imperial palace, Qin Gui, who had sent him. As for the specific purpose, the man didn't know. The descendant of the battle general Qin Gui, the order that Qin Gongyun gave this man was to kill Qin Yu. Although the man was a martial emperor, he didn't have a high status in the heavenly imperial palace. After all, his talent was limited. He would probably remain a rank 2 martial emperor for the rest of his life. The heavenly imperial palace is obviously not a peaceful place. Why don't we take this opportunity to leave? The dragon soul in the divine dragon ancient seal said after seeing the man's memory. For what happened in the ancestral hall? The descendants of the 12 war generals in the Sky Emperor Palace were obviously strong enough to fight against the descendants of the 3 emperors. This kind of confrontation was not a confrontation between martial Emperor realm elders, but a confrontation between top-level Emperor realm masters. Otherwise, given Sun Shiyu's status in the Imperial Palace, it was impossible that Qin Yu didn't have the right to become a core member of the clan. Furthermore, the Azure Ghost War General's descendant was able to hide from the three sovereigns' descendants and send martial emperors to hunt down Qin Yu. The descendants of the 12 war generals had more control over certain aspects of Sky Emperor Palace than the descendants of the three emperors. There's no rush. Let's wait and see. Qin Yu fell into deep thought. Although the situation in the Sky Emperor Palace was troublesome, its position was also the best protection. As long as he was in the Sky Emperor Palace, no matter how strong the descendants of the 12 war generals were, they would not be able to threaten him. Another point was that Sun Shiyu's three emperors' superpower was obviously stronger than his. Qin Yu felt that even if he wanted to leave, he would have to obtain the true sacred art of the three emperors first. Now that he was in the Heaven Domain, the 9 secrets of the Battle Dragon was not suitable to be used in public. Therefore, the three emperors' divine ability was the best way to deal with it. This blood demon's heart is for you. Don't destroy the imprint inside. Qin Yu came back to his senses. He saw the skeleton ghost king devouring the man's vitality. He put away the man's withered body and took out the blood demon's heart. The blood demon's heart. The skeleton ghost king was overjoyed. The man's vitality had already allowed his cultivation to reach the peak of rank 3 martial emperor. Now that he had the blood demon's heart, he was certain to become a rank 4 martial emperor. Chi. Without hesitation, the skeleton ghost king took the blood demon's heart and immediately started refining it. The skeleton ghost king absorbed a vast amount of chi and blood energy. Although the blood demon's heart did not look big, the energy it contained was more than 10 times that of the blood sea. Moreover, the purity of the blood was also more than 10 times. After all, this was a martial emperor blood demon that had cultivated for countless years. The vitality it contained was immeasurable. Boom! As expected, after absorbing the blood essence of the blood demon's heart, the blood essence of the blood demon's heart disappeared. The skeleton ghost king's cultivation had successfully broken through to rank 4 martial emperor. Its strength had greatly increased. The other half of the ancient stone artifact seal had also come from the blood demon's heart. Qin Yu carefully observed the half of the ancient stoneware seal. The ancient stone artifact seal was very light and did not seem to be made of stone. When viewed from the side, this ancient stone artifact seal looked like the head of a key. All of a sudden, the stone artifact seal trembled slightly, as if it wanted to fly in a certain direction. Qin Yu raised his head and looked at the direction where the ancient stone tool seal was emitting ripples. That direction was the core region of the Blood Demon continent. Qin Yu thought for a moment, then flew towards the direction of the ancient stone tool seal with the skeleton ghost king. Qin Yu could faintly feel that the sealing fluctuations emitted by this ancient stone artifact seal were not left behind by an ordinary person. If he hadn't comprehended the God Emperor's sealing divine light, Qin Yu probably wouldn't have noticed it. The skeleton ghost king was a rank 4 martial emperor. Along the way, all the blood demons and blood-transformed demonic beasts were easily squashed to death. Finally, Qin Yu followed the ancient stone artifact seal and arrived in front of a blood mountain. In the blood mountain, there was a stone cave that didn't seem to have any abnormalities. However, when Qin Yu stepped into the stone cave, the half of the ancient stone artifact seal trembled even more violently. As they went deeper into the stone cave, Qin Yu saw many forked paths in front of him. As they went deeper, the paths became even more intertwined. The interior of the stone cave looked like a maze. After a few hundred miles, Qin Yu finally felt that something was wrong. His soul perception was suppressed, and he could only sense 100 feet in front of him. The crucial point was that Qin Yu still didn't know when his perception had been suppressed. When he realized it, he was already deep into the maze. He didn't know who could set up such a natural trap that even he couldn't detect it quickly. This doesn't look good. The dragon's soul scanned the surroundings and formed hand seals. The space-time energy revolved around his body. This maze made him feel even more dangerous than when he encountered a martial emperor. It's rumored that the blood demon continent is filled with danger. Qin didn't cower. Instead, he was eager to give it a try. However, Qin, who continued to travel 1,000 miles deeper, did not encounter any dangers. When Qin reached the end of the passageway, an ancient palace appeared before his eyes. That's right, there was an ancient palace buried at the bottom of the mountain. It was unknown when the ancient palace was built, but it was blood-red in color. At first glance, it looked like it was made of blood. Qin looked around cautiously. When he didn't find anything abnormal, he stepped into the ancient palace. The ancient palace wasn't very big. It was only about 10 miles wide. There weren't any decorations in the palace. It looked empty. Gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. However, there was a blood pool in the depths of the ancient palace. The blood in the pool was boiling, and there was an intoxicating fragrance coming from it. Chapter 314. Thousand Soul Incense. Qin Yu's nose twitched as he instantly sensed it. His face changed as he immediately sealed his 5 senses. The golden heaven incinerating flame burned in his body, incinerating all the fragrance that he had inhaled. The Thousand Soul Incense was a famous taboo item in ancient times. According to ancient records, this incense was made from the power of thousands of souls. Once it was absorbed into one's body, one soul would be controlled by the Thousand Soul Incense and become a puppet. Even a martial emperor or an emperor realm master would find it difficult to resist it. That was why the Thousand Soul Incense was a taboo item in ancient times. It was said that the true origin of the Thousand Soul Incense was an ancient holy land passed down from ancient times. As for the specific refining method, it had long been lost. Who would have thought that the Thousand Soul Incense would exist in this blood palace? Qin instantly sensed it. But the skeleton ghost king was tricked and involuntarily walked towards the blood pool. Seal. Qin Yu's heart moved. Countless mysterious seals appeared on the barbarian god emperor's body and completely covered it. Qin Yu struck out with his palm and condensed the sealing divine light into the skeleton ghost king's soul and sealed it. Then, the golden heaven burning fire burned and covered the skeleton ghost king's body. What happened just now? After a while, the skeleton ghost king came back to his senses. There was a clear look of lingering fear on his face. Although he was conscious just now, his soul was out of control and wanted to step into the blood pool. Qin removed the seal and explained simply. Fortunately, the Thousand Soul Incense had been in this palace for many years. Its power. It was far less powerful than what was recorded in the ancient records. If it was the real Thousand Soul Incense, he and the skeleton ghost king would be in big trouble. Plop! Suddenly, the broken stone artifact ancient seal in Qin Yu's hand broke free from his palm and flew into the blood pool. The blood that had been boiling suddenly froze. In the next moment, an ancient stone box emerged from the blood pool. The surface of the stone box was covered with dense and shocking ancient runes. Just like what Qin Yu had seen before, that half of the ancient stone artifact seal was the head of an ancient key. As the spirit inscriptions spread out, the originally broken key merged into one. As for the key, it was directly inserted into the ancient stone box. The sealing aura emanating from the ancient key grew stronger and stronger. After the ancient stone box appeared, it quietly floated above the blood water without any abnormalities. That stone artifact key seems to be the restriction that suppresses the ancient box. The dragon's soul took a look and said, "Could this be related to the rumored blood demon?" Qin Yu's eyes flashed as this thought popped into his mind. After thinking for a moment, Qin Yu stretched out his right hand. In the void, the law of chaos condensed on the ancient stone box. Crack! The law of chaos seemed to have transformed into an invisible palm that spun in the air. The ancient key was turned, opening the ancient stone box. Boom! In the next moment, it was as if the sky had collapsed and a tsunami had swept over. A vast blood-red light erupted from the ancient stone box in all directions. In an instant, it covered the entire blood palace. Even the thousands of mountain peaks were filled with the blood-red light. The power of the Emperor's spirit. Qin Yu instantly sensed it. This vast blood-red light was the power of the Emperor's spirit of a true Emperor realm expert. Judging from the strength of this soul power, the owner of this blood-red light had probably reached the peak of the Emperor realm when he was alive. Could it be the rumored blood demon? Woo-woo. At this moment, the vast blood-red light that filled the void began to spin wildly with Qin Yu as the center. In an instant, it turned into a blood-red vortex. In the center of the vortex was Qin Yu and the skeleton Ghost King. Dragon Soul. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. With a thought, he put away the skeleton Ghost King. Roar. In the ancient dragon seal, the dragon soul let out an earth-shaking dragon roar and directly escaped from the dragon body. In the form of a soul, it appeared in Qin Yu's sea of soul. Almost at this moment, an incomparably powerful will broke into Qin Yu's sea of soul. Qin Yu did not seem surprised at all. He immediately formed a seal with both hands and sank his consciousness into his sea of soul. At this moment, a blood-red figure condensed in Qin Yu's sea of soul. That person was dressed in a blood-red robe and had a head full of blood-red hair. His eyes were as dense as blood. On his handsome young face, there was a faint blood-red ancient rune. The domineering aura on his body was extremely terrifying, as if it was real. Although he did not deliberately emit it, it made people feel a palpitating pressure. Emperor spirit origin. Possession. No, you are a reincarnator. While Qin Yu was sizing up the blood-red robe man, the blood-red robe man also looked up and down at Qin Yu and said in surprise. The blood-red robe man could tell that Qin Yu was a reincarnator of the Emperor's spirit. You are the blood demon? Qin Yu was also a little shocked. This blood-red robe man was another existence that saw through his reincarnation identity after the Jiang clan's reincarnation siblings. Blood demon? Haha, I didn't expect that no one in the Qingyun region would know my emperor title. It would appear that those people have completely erased my deeds. The blood-red robe man chuckled. Those people? Thoughts flashed through Qin Yu's mind. Could the blood demon be talking about the 10 emperor masters who had joined forces to seal him in the past? Although you are a reincarnation emperor, you are only a junior in front of me. Let me ask you, who is your master? Which Tao orthodoxy did you cultivate? The smile on the blood demon's face did not change. But as soon as he said this, a vast emperor aura suddenly descended, as if an invincible god had descended. Peak Emperor Master? This guy. The power of the Emperor's spirit did not dissipate at all. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul were even more shocked. The blood demon had been sealed for many years, but the power of the Emperor's spirit had not dissipated. The blood-red robe man had not become a ghost cultivator or a soul cultivator. He was just a pure Emperor spirit. Everyone had a soul and a physical body. The soul was the origin, and the physical body was the carrier. Neither could be missing, but if the soul dissipated, it would definitely die. If the physical body was destroyed, the soul could leave the body. But it would either have to be reincarnated or become a ghost cultivator or a soul cultivator to maintain the soul power. It was impossible to exist purely in the soul state, even if it was an Emperor Realm Master, because the soul origin would gradually dissipate in heaven and earth after losing the carrier of the physical body. But this blood demon completely ignored the rules of heaven and earth. What kind of cultivation had he reached when he was alive? Who my master is and what sect I practice seems to have nothing to do with you. Of course, even if the blood demon had the power of a peak emperor spirit, this was his soul sea, so Qin Yu was not afraid at all. Since you don't want to say, then I have to see for myself. The blood demon was not angry. With a laugh, he moved his hands. The blood curse appeared in the void, turned into a rolling blood wave, and swept toward Qin Yu. Suppress. Qin Yu's mind moved, and the ancient seal of the divine dragon trembled, and an extremely terrifying pressure descended. The surging blood waves formed by the blood curse were obviously much weaker than before. Dragon aura? What a powerful, divine weapon. The blood demon raised his head and looked at the ancient seal of the divine dragon that appeared in his soul's sea, his eyes flashing with shock. Chapter 315. Even with the strength of the blood demon's emperor's soul, he still felt his heart palpitate in front of the ancient dragon seal. Such a divine weapon was definitely enough to be ranked among the top divine weapons in ancient times. Blood curse. Although he was surprised, the blood demon did not stop there. Countless ancient and mysterious blood curses condensed. Even under the suppression of the ancient dragon seal, the means that the blood demon could use were extremely shocking. However, those blood curses did not attack Qin, but directly seeped into his soul sea. In the next moment, Qin and the dragon soul, who had taken the opportunity to attack, froze. The dragon soul and Qin were not controlled. They were just shocked by the scene in front of them. In Qin soul sea, white bubbles emerged one after another. Within each bubble, there were images that appeared one after another. Those images were the Archean fighting dragon incantation that Qin cultivated. In addition, there were the 9 esotericas of the fighting dragon, the heaven-swallowing dragon seal, and other dragon clan magical powers. It could be said that they were Qin biggest secrets. At this moment, they were all displayed without any reservation. This is the Archean fighting dragon incantation. Even the blood demon was stunned when he saw the magical powers and secret techniques on Qin body. He recognized the Archean fighting dragon incantation. Dragon soul. Qin suddenly came back to his senses. His eyes were cold, and killing intent filled the air. He changed his attack. The ancient dragon seal let out a mighty dragon roar, and its power became more and more destructive as it suppressed the blood demon. Qin body, the Azure Dragon, and the Dragon Clan's magical powers and secret techniques were also directly displayed. Time and space reversal. The dragon soul naturally understood Qin meaning, and the space-time magical powers appeared. Qin soul sea was instantly filled with the terrifying power of time and space reversal, completely sealing the blood demon. The blood demon did not seem to notice the attack of Qin and the dragon soul. He stood there without any resistance. In the blink of an eye, the blood demon was suppressed by the ancient dragon seal and the space-time power. However, his eyes were still fixed on those floating white bubbles. In those bubbles, the 9 esotericas of the fighting dragon and the dragon clan's magical powers were constantly evolving. I see. You've been to the immortal trove. Only when Qin destructive killer move past through his body did blood demon come back to his senses. His eyes narrowed as he stared at Qin, his pupils flashing with a bloody light. Immortal treasure. Qin, who was about to use the sealing divine light killer move, froze. His pupils shrunk. A ripple appeared in his cold eyes. The immortal treasury was the forbidden area where Qin had obtained the ancient battle dragon art and the immortal reincarnation pill in his past life. It was precisely because Qin had gone deep into that forbidden area that he knew it was called the immortal trove. Could it be that the blood demon had been to that forbidden area before? There's no need to be nervous. Since you're not inheriting the orthodoxy of one of the 10 people, you'll be able to do it. In that case, I will naturally not attack you. On the contrary, it will give you an opportunity. As the blood devil spoke, the blood curse that had seeped into Qin soul sea quietly returned to his body. All the white bubbles also returned to Qin soul sea. The 10 people you mentioned are the 10 emperors who suppressed you back then? Qin eyes flashed slightly, but he did not make a move for the time being. Of course, the ancient seal of the divine dragon and the space-time ability were still suppressing the blood demon. However, from a scene of the attack directly penetrating the blood demon just now, the blood demon did not seem to be sealed by the ancient seal of the divine dragon and the space-time ability. Since you say that I'm a demon, then you must have made up a story to fool the future generations. Tell me about it. The blood demon smiled and said, regarding this, Chinyu did not try to conceal it. He directly told her about the rumors that he had heard. Bring chaos to the heavenly region? Save the 9 provinces? Ha! You really know how to flatter them. The blood demon smiled coldly. Seeing this, Chinyu's eyebrows twitched slightly. It seemed that there was more to the rumors about the blood demon. However, Chinyu did not care whether the rumors about the blood demon were true or false. However, what the blood demon might know about the immortal trove in the heaven domain's forbidden land piqued Chinyu's interest. Have you heard of the Tai, divine sect? The sneer on blood demon's face disappeared as he asked, are you talking about the top 10 ancient holy clans? Chinyu pondered for a moment, and his eyes flashed with surprise. The only known martial epics in the heaven domain were the immemorial epic, the ancient epic, and the ancient epic. After the ancient times, it was the current era of cultivation. There was once an ancient powerhouse who used a peerless ability to look back into the past and see many things of the past. From this, they concluded that the martial arts standard of the Qingyun realm was constantly falling. Whether it was the top experts or the overall strength, it was the same. The present was inferior to the ancient era to the ancient era, and the ancient era to the ancient era. In the heaven domain, there were very few stories about the immemorial era and the ancient era. However, the inheritance of the top 10 ancient holy clans had been passed down. The Tai holy sect that Blood Demon mentioned was the leader of the 10 great ancient holy sects. It was easy to imagine how powerful a divine sect that had existed since ancient times was. Looks like the matter of the Arcane sect has been passed down to this era. Blood Demon nodded slightly. You're an ancient cultivator? No, the rumors about you only appeared a few thousand years ago. Chinyu's eyelids twitched, and he immediately reacted. Although a few thousand years ago was a long time, it was not even the ancient era. A few thousand years ago? That's just something they made up. I dare say that you definitely don't know the exact time of this rumor. Blood Demon chuckled and asked in return. Chinyu shook his head. Indeed, he had only heard about the Blood Demon continent in his previous life. At that time, he was not interested in finding out about the specific situation. Any rumor is derived from the truth. However, as for how the rumor is derived, it naturally depends on how the person who spread the rumor fabricates it. If I'm not wrong, the rumors about me that you've heard in this era are all from the ancient era. They were all fabricated by the descendants of the top 10 ancient holy clans. Soon, Chinyu learned from Blood Demon that Blood Demon had wreaked havoc in the heaven domain. Blood Demon was from the Tai holy sect, the leader of the top 10 ancient holy sects. He was talented and extraordinary, and he rose to power. He became the most outstanding Emperor Realm expert of his era. However, the secret of Blood Demon's rise was discovered by the top 10 Emperor Realm experts of the Tai holy sect. It turned out that Blood Demon had entered the forbidden zone of the heaven domain, the immortal treasury. He had obtained the immortal blood soul art in the immortal treasury and entered the Tao as a blood cultivator, reaching the peak of the Emperor realm. After Blood Demon's secret was exposed, he was besieged by the top 10 Emperor realm experts of the Tai holy sect in the forbidden zone of the immortal treasury. Blood Demon was outnumbered and had no choice but to die in the end. However, because he cultivated the immortal blood soul art, no matter how many times his Emperor soul was killed, it could be condensed elsewhere. Helpless, the top 10 Emperor Realm experts could only seal Blood Demon's Emperor soul forever. Later, Blood Demon broke through a trace of the seal and emitted Blood Demon Chi to corrode the living beings of the continent. Thus, the Blood Demon continent was formed. Of course, the birth of the Blood Demon continent naturally attracted the attention of the top 10 Emperor Realm experts. That was why there were rumors of Blood Demon wreaking havoc in the 9 provinces of the Heaven Domain in the future. This was also why the top forces would often come to the Blood Demon continent to exterminate those powerful blood demons. Other than wanting to obtain the heart of the Blood Demon, which was a rare divine medicine, Another reason was that they did not want Blood Demon to be revived. Chapter 316. The Immortal Blood Soul Technique. The 9 Spiraling Dragon Technique. The Xiantian Divine Technique. The Immemorial Fighting Dragon Technique. After hearing that, countless thoughts appeared in Qin Yu's mind. The Blood Demon obtained the Immortal Blood Soul Technique, while Xing Luo obtained the 9 Spiraling Dragon Technique. His second senior sister obtained the Xiantian Divine Technique, while he obtained the Immemorial Fighting Dragon Technique. These 4 cultivation skills had created 3 peak Emperor Realm Masters. His second senior sister would have no problem reaching the peak Emperor Realm. This made Qin Yu very curious. What kind of person was the owner of the Celestial Treasury? To think that he was able to create such a shocking and world-shaking divine technique. Although I was besieged and died, I left behind a primordial restriction in the Celestial Treasury. You were able to break the restriction I left behind. You're quite powerful. The Blood Demon looked at Qin Yu with interest. The primordial restriction he left behind was something that even the 10 great emperors of the Tai Divine sect could not break. I didn't break it. I used some tricks. Although Qin Yu's master had taken action, the restriction in the forbidden area was still not broken. Later, he had to use the restriction talisman to let him, Xing Luo, and the other 3 enter the Celestial Treasury. From there, he obtained the Immemorial Fighting Dragon Technique and the Reincarnation Immortal Pill. As far as I know, there should be 3 more techniques in the Celestial Treasury. You were able to choose the most powerful Immemorial Fighting Dragon Technique from those 3 techniques. I don't know if I should say that you are lucky or have a unique eye. The Blood Demon's tone was obviously envious, but there was also a strong sense of regret. It could be said that he was the first to enter the Celestial Treasury. However, he had taken a fancy to the Immortal Blood Soul Technique, which could condense the Immortal Emperor Soul after successfully cultivating it. Thus, he missed out on the Immemorial Fighting Dragon Technique. Until now, the Blood Demon still regretted his choice. In fact, the Blood Demon had thought of taking all 4 techniques with him. However, the Celestial Treasury was a mysterious place. He could only choose one of the 4 techniques. Even a peak Emperor Realm expert could not defy the rules of the Celestial Treasury. The Immemorial Fighting Dragon Technique is the most powerful. What do you know? Qin Yu's eyes slightly flashed. He was somewhat moved. In his previous life, he had just obtained the ancient Battle Dragon art. Qin Yu did not think that the Immemorial Battle Dragon Technique was the strongest of the 3 techniques. After all, whether it was the 9 Revolution Berserk Dragon Technique or the Profound Heaven Divine Spirit Technique, they both had their own profoundness. For example, after successfully cultivating the 9 Revolutions Berserk Dragon art, one would possess the power of Berserk Dragons. After fusing with the dragon's blood, one could even transform into an ancient Berserk Dragon with astonishing battle prowess. In his previous life, Qin Yu often sparred with Star Luo, so he knew how terrifying Star Luo was when he transformed into a Berserk Dragon. The Profound Heaven Divine Spirit Technique could cultivate the Profound Heaven Energy. It was rumored that when the Profound Heaven Energy was cultivated to the peak, it could transform into the legendary Profound Heaven Divine Power. The Profound Heaven Divine Power was the legendary power of the ancient gods in the Heaven Domain. However, it was only later that Qin Yu realized how powerful the Immemorial Battle Dragon art was. As long as he devoured the dragon's blood, his cultivation base would continue to evolve, and he would also be able to obtain the dragon's blood origin ability. In his previous life, Qin Yu had become the strongest venerable sovereign because of this ability. In the 9 states of the Heaven Domain, all the top forces had venerable sovereigns. Those forces that had a long history and a strong foundation had many venerable sovereigns. However, during that era, Qin Yu was publicly recognized as the strongest person in terms of battle power. Countless venerable sovereigns had challenged him, and hundreds of them had died in his hands. Qin Yu relied on the 9 secrets of the Battle Dragon and the thousands of dragon clans' divine power. These two were the strongest aspects of the immemorial battle dragon art. It seems that you have not fully comprehended the immemorial battle dragon art. Blood Demon was stunned by Qin Yu's words, but he immediately understood. Qin Yu did not say anything and waited for Blood Demon to continue. The situation was just as Blood Demon had said. In his previous life, he had only comprehended 4 of the 9 secrets of the battle dragon art. The main dragon vein that he had condensed had only reached the cyan level, and the sub-dragon veins were stuck at 99. He had yet to discover the potential of the immemorial battle dragon art. Since you have not fully comprehended it, I will not say more. Back to the topic, as I said just now, you are not the descendant of those 10 people, and you're not practicing their Tao. Therefore, I will give you an opportunity. Hearing Blood Demon's words, Qin Yu frowned slightly. He was still waiting for Blood Demon to explain the immemorial battle dragon art. However, he did not expect Blood Demon to change the topic. What opportunity? However, Qin Yu did not dwell on the immemorial battle dragon art. This was the first time he had met Blood Demon. What the Blood Demon said might not necessarily be true. Anyway, the immemorial battle dragon art was with him, and he would find out what secrets there were in the future. I know how to enter the core area of the immortal treasury. Blood Demon looked at Qin Yu seriously. The corner of Qin Yu's eyes twitched uncontrollably. Blood Demon's words had a great impact on him. He still remembered how terrifying the restrictions in the depths of the immortal treasury were. Even with his master's cultivation back then, he could not shake it at all. What do you want me to do? Qin Yu said calmly. He had no relationship with Blood Demon. Qin Yu did not believe that Blood Demon would tell him such a big secret for no reason. I just want a promise from you. When you reach the peak of the sovereign realm in the future, you will completely destroy the Tao of those 10 people. As Blood Demon spoke, blood light flashed in front of him, and 10 sovereign realm names appeared. The ancient times had passed, and even the ancient times had become a thing of the past. Not to mention the 10 people who had besieged him. Even the Tai Divine sect had disappeared in the long river of history. Although those 10 people were no longer around, their Tao legacies were left behind. If he wanted to take revenge, he could only destroy their Tao legacies. Since you have already cultivated the immortal blood soul, and now you have broken the seal, why don't you take revenge yourself? Qin Yu glanced at the names of the 10 sovereigns, then looked at the Blood Devil. Although Blood Demon was only a sovereign realm soul, he was not weak at all. As long as he was reborn, it should not be difficult for him to recover his cultivation. In this world, no one can live forever. The immortal blood soul also has its limits. The reason why I'm still alive is because I'm borrowing the power of the seal on this continent. Once I leave, the blood soul will completely dissipate. Blood Demon said directly, "This is also the reason why I have been waiting for someone to come." The dragon soul tilted its head and looked at Qin Yu. Although it did not say anything, it could not suppress the murderous intent in its heart. Blood Demon now knew that Qin Yu cultivated the immemorial battle dragon art. If someone else were to come, then Qin Yu's identity might be exposed by him. As long as what you said is true, then I can promise you, when I recover my cultivation, I will help you destroy those 10 people's Tao legacies. Qin Yu thought for a moment, then said, compared to worrying about his identity being exposed, he was worried about the possibility of his identity being exposed. The method to enter the core area of the immortal treasury was the most important. Qin Yu always felt that the core of the immortal treasury hid a great secret. That secret was worth risking his life for. Actually, you also have the method to enter the core of the immortal treasury. Blood Demon smiled and opened his right hand. Blood light flashed in the center of his palm. An ancient bronze token floated up, emitting a mysterious, immortal aura. Chapter 317. Ancient Immortal Token. Qin Yu was shocked. He didn't expect to see another ancient immortal token in the Blood Demon's possession. It seems a little different. The dragon soul took a closer look and said. Hearing that, Qin Yu carefully looked at it. Sure enough, The ancient immortal token in the blood demon's hand had an ancient word immortal on the front. On the back was a figure looking down at the world with a domineering aura. There are a total of 8 ancient immortal tokens. When the 8 of them combine, they can break the core restriction. The ancient immortal token in my hand is the most special. It can sense the location of the other ancient immortal tokens. The blood demon threw the ancient immortal token to Chinyu with his right hand. After Chinyu grabbed the ancient immortal badge, he was indeed able to sense the fluctuations of the ancient immortal badge. In addition, Chinyu could also vaguely sense the location of the other ancient immortal tokens. Each of them was in a different direction and was quite far away. Obviously, no one had obtained 2. It seems that I will have to go through a lot of trouble to enter the core of the immortal treasure. According to his senior brother, 5 ancient immortal tokens had appeared in the heaven domain for some reason. Later, they were taken away by various peak sovereigns. Although the ancient immortal token of the heaven-suppressing Ghost Emperor was now in his hands. The ancient immortal token that appeared in the barbarian god relic was snatched away by Star Luo. If he wanted to get all the ancient immortal tokens, he would have to deal with several peak sovereigns. I have told you everything that needs to be said. I hope you can fulfill your promise in the future. With that, the blood demon left Chinyu's soul sea under the suppression of the ancient dragon seal and the power of time and space. Such a method had once again shocked Chinyu and the dragon soul. He was truly worthy of being a renowned expert. His abilities were truly not for show. Don't worry. I will never break my promise. However, I hope you won't tell anyone about me. Chinyu's soul returned to his body and opened his eyes. The blood-red vortex in the blood palace had disappeared, and the blood soul stood in front of Chinyu. Since I've entrusted this matter to you, I will naturally not allow anyone else to come here. Every time I leave the sealed blood pool, I have to pay a huge price. The blood soul smiled. Goodbye. Chinyu nodded and didn't stay for long. He left the blood temple at the bottom of the mountain. I hope he can open the forbidden area of the immortal vault. Otherwise, I will really be sealed here forever. After watching Chinyu leave, the blood demon murmured softly. The fact that Chinyu was able to come here was not a coincidence. He had deliberately guided him here. Of course, Chinyu had actually been to the Immortal Trove and even obtained the most mysterious immemorial battle dragon art. However, this was beyond his expectations. Or rather, it should be said that it was a pleasant surprise. After a while, the blood demon returned to the sealed ancient box. With a click, the stone artifact key turned and completely sealed the ancient box. Following that, the blood water surged and the sealed ancient box sank to the bottom of the blood pool. Only the gurgling sound of blood could be heard in the entire blood palace again. In the depths of the cave, Chinyu set up several divine-level illusory formations before leaving the cave. This time, he met the blood demon and learned the method to enter the forbidden area of the immortal vault. For Chinyu, it could be said to be a great opportunity. Of course, the premise was that the blood demon's words were true. Swoosh! In the sky, Chinyu took a deep look at the mountain peak and quickly flew away. His main goal now was to find the dragon race as soon as possible and recover his cultivation. Whether it was the ancient immortal token or the forbidden area's immortal vault, Chinyu would only have enough strength to touch them if he recovered the cultivation of his previous life. Now, even if he knew who had the ancient immortal token, he couldn't snatch it. The only regret was that the blood demon didn't tell him the secret of the immemorial battle dragon art in the end. Chinyu didn't think that the blood demon was bluffing. The blood demon might really know something. Rumble. In the blood demon continent, above a crimson river, Chinyu let the skeleton Ghost King out. Following this, he carved a teleportation formation at the bottom of the river. Chinyu decided to leave the skeleton Ghost King in the blood demon continent to cultivate. After all, although martial monarch realm blood demons were rare on the blood demon continent, there were countless martial progenitor realm blood demons. It was no doubt the best choice for the skeleton Ghost King to cultivate here. That being said, whether the skeleton Ghost King could cultivate in the blood demon continent smoothly or not, He was still waiting to see how the situation in the Heavenly Imperial Palace would develop. Even now, Qin Yu still did not know what the situation inside the Heavenly Imperial Palace was like. He had no idea why Sun Shiyu had purposely gone to the 7 great martial realms and brought him to the Heavenly Imperial Palace. If he could cultivate in the Heavenly Imperial Palace, he could rely on the Heavenly Imperial Palace. Qin Yu obviously didn't need the Skeleton Ghost King. However, if he were to leave the Heavenly Imperial Palace, Qin Yu would have to bring the Skeleton Ghost King with him. No matter how shocking Qin Yu's secret techniques were, he was only a martial progenitor now. Cultivation was the foundation of everything. This sentence was perfect to describe Qin Yu's current situation. Crack! As he crushed the jade talisman that Sun Shiyu had given him, a mysterious teleportation formation appeared. In the next moment, Sun Shiyu arrived. Success. Seeing that Qin Yu was fine, Sun Shiyu let out a sigh of relief. Qin Yu nodded slightly. Let's go. A smile appeared on Sun Shiyu's face. This time, the descendants of the 12 battle generals would have nothing to say. Following this, the two immediately teleported back. Heavenly Imperial Palace, Ancestral Hall. They were indeed Nirvana realm blood demons, and they were sealed with the divine light of sealing. Countless descendants of the 3 sovereigns and the 12 battle generals gathered in the Ancestral Hall. The white-haired First Elder said loudly after checking the blood demons that Qin Yu had sealed. Killing a Nirvana realm martial progenitor as a rank 7 martial progenitor. Even if the descendants of the 12 battle generals wanted to stop him, they had no reason to do so. After all, they were the ones who had suggested the trial on the blood demon continent. What's going on? Did Qin Hong not find him? Or did something unexpected happen? The black-haired old woman Qin Gongyun, the descendant of General Qin Gui, had a confused look in her eyes. Although the people she had sent were only rank 2 martial monarchs, insignificant in the Sky Emperor Palace. However, they should be more than enough to deal with a rank 7 martial progenitor. However, Qin Yu had returned safely, but the martial monarchs that she had sent were nowhere to be found. This caused her to have an ominous feeling in her heart. Follow me. After passing the trial, Qin Yu had successfully entered the Ancestral Hall and become a core member of the Sky Emperor Palace. After coming out from the Ancient Hall, Qin Yu was led by Sun Shiyu to a magnificent palace. Monarch! The expressions of Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul both slightly changed. They could sense the aura of a monarch from the palace. Qin Yu saw the black-robed, middle-aged man inside the palace. Second uncle. Sun Shiyu greeted her second uncle, Sun Jiuxiao, and said to Shun Feng, Shun Feng, this is my second uncle, the Thunder Firmament Monarch. Chapter 3:18. Senior. Qin Yu bowed. No matter what his strength and status was in his previous life, now that he was just a martial ancestor, he naturally had to be respectful when facing an emperor. However, Qin Yu had never heard of the name Thunder Firmament Emperor in his previous life. However, the slight pressure emitted from this person was shockingly strong. He was obviously not an ordinary emperor. It seemed that he was a hidden powerhouse of Heavenly Imperial Palace. No force would only have the top powerhouses on the surface. Heavenly Imperial Palace had been passed down from the era of the 3 ancient emperors. Although it had suffered many disasters, it was still a top force in the spirit state, and it definitely had more than just the emperors on the surface. I have long heard that a peerless genius has appeared in the bloodline of the Divine Emperor. Seeing you today, the rumors are true. Sun Jiuxiao opened his eyes and looked at Qin Yu. His gaze was as deep as the vast galaxy, mysterious and unfathomable. With one glance, Qin Yu felt as if he had been seen through. Senior, you flatter me. As an emperor, Sun Jiuxiao was so friendly to him, which made Qin Yu a little wary. You must be curious why we brought you to Heavenly Imperial Palace, right? Sun Jiuxiao saw Qin Yu's wariness, smiled, and went straight to the point. Junior does have such doubts in his heart, Qin Yu said bluntly. Actually, The reason why we brought you to Heavenly Imperial Palace is because of the prophecy left by our ancestors, Sun Jiuxiao, who thought that Qin Yu was also a descendant of the three emperors, did not hide anything. He told Qin Yu that the bloodline of the three emperors was about to completely dissipate, as well as the prophecy of his ancestors. Prophecy? Qin Yu raised his eyebrows slightly. In the history of the Heaven Domain, people who could go back in time and predict the future were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Such an existence, to a certain extent, was already able to interfere with the future. Such a person actually appeared in Heavenly Imperial Palace? Qin Yu did not think that Sun Jiuxiao was talking nonsense. Because he had indeed obtained the inheritance of the three emperors and subdued the golden flame heaven-burning dragon. However, in this way, Qin Yu knew that the bloodline of the three emperors was in danger of dissipating. Why didn't Sun Shiyu and the others find it strange that he didn't carry the bloodline of the three monarchs? Second uncle, let's go to the divine palace first. Sun Shiyu said, was Qin Yu the one who made the prophecy? It all depended on whether Qin Yu could obtain the true inheritance of the three sovereigns' magic skills. Sun Jiuxiao nodded. With a wave of his sleeve, a bolt of purple lightning flashed. The three of them disappeared from the huge palace and appeared in front of an ancient palace surrounded by divine light. This could be said to be the most important place in the Sky Emperor Palace, the Divine Palace. Almost all the experts of Sky Emperor Palace who had passed away would leave their inheritances in the Divine Palace. Later generations would obtain the inheritance and strengthen the power of the Heavenly Imperial Palace. Among these masters, there were even many Emperor Realm Masters. Even though Emperor Realm Masters had a long lifespan, they were not immortal. Of course, the venerable sovereigns of the Heaven Domain rarely passed away normally. Most of them had died in various forbidden grounds, ancient ruins, or in great battles. When one reached the Emperor Realm, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to make even a small step forward. Therefore, they could only explore the various forbidden areas of the Heaven Domain in hopes of obtaining heaven-defying opportunities. Wang Sun Jiuxiao took out an ancient spirit tablet. After the spirit tablet touched the divine light, a hole appeared on it. The three of them entered in a single file. There was no one guarding the divine palace. Only a few Emperor Realm Masters in Heavenly Imperial Palace had access to the barriers outside. The interior of the divine palace also appeared to be empty. In the void, there were balls of white light that floated gently in the divine palace. Those white lights were the inheritances left behind by the experts of the ancient imperial palace who had passed away. Only those who were fated to be recognized could obtain those inheritances. Sensing Sun Jiuxiao and the other two entering, many of the white lights trembled and quietly flew over. Sun Jiuxiao flicked his finger, and an invisible aura appeared around him, isolating all the white lights. They went all the way to the end of the divine palace. Inside, there was an independent area where the white light of inheritance did not appear. Instead, there were 15 majestic stone statues. 3 of them stood tall, while the other 12 were kneeling on one knee. Obviously, they were the 3 ancient sovereigns and the 12 generals. Go! Sun Jiuxiao stopped at the edge of the area and dissipated the aura around him as he said to Qin Yu. Qin Yu stepped forward and walked to the stone statues of the 3 ancient sovereigns under the hopeful gazes of Sun Jiuxiao and Sun Shiyu. Appear! With a thought, Qin Yu's body flickered and the divine abilities of the 3 ancient sovereigns appeared. Kacha! They seemed to have sensed the divine abilities of the 3 ancient sovereigns released by Qin Yu. A crack appeared between the eyebrows of the stone statues of the 3 ancient sovereigns as clear divine abilities appeared. Heaven and Earth Tao Arts. Qin Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. Those divine abilities were Heaven and Earth Tao Arts that only Emperor Realm Masters could comprehend. No wonder Sun Shiyu's battle Emperor divine abilities were far superior to his. The essence of the 2 inheritances were completely different. It's really him. Sun Jiuxiao and Sun Shiyu, who had been watching intently, were overjoyed. The ancestors' prophecy was true. Qin Yu was the one who would obtain the inheritance of the three ancient sovereigns and ignite the bloodline of the three ancient sovereigns. He was the prophesied person who would allow Sky Emperor Palace to reappear the might of the three ancient sovereigns. Swish, swish. After the divine abilities of the three ancient sovereigns appeared, three beams of divine light appeared between the eyebrows of the three stone statues and landed on Qin Yu. After the dazzling divine light flashed, Qin Yu's figure disappeared from the area. Rumble. At this moment, the three stone statues seemed to have come to life. An unparalleled pressure that shook the heavens and earth spread out, sweeping through the clouds and shaking the sky. Above Sky Emperor Palace, three illusory figures of divine light appeared, as if the three ancient sovereigns had reappeared. At this moment, the White Sun Realm and even the entire northern region of the spiritual state were shocked. Countless masters sensed and looked in the direction of Sky Emperor Palace. The entire northern region of the spiritual state was in chaos. The ancestors have appeared. As for the people of Sky Emperor Palace, they couldn't help but kneel and worship the three illusory figures of the three ancient sovereigns, especially the descendants of Emperor Shi and Emperor Zhang. When the three illusory figures appeared, they could vaguely feel the blood in their bodies flowing faster and faster. It was as if some power in their blood was undergoing a metamorphosis. This is the Tao Technique world. At this moment, Qin Yu, who was enveloped by the divine light of the three ancient sovereigns, disappeared from the area. He appeared in a vast starry sky. Qin Yu looked around and immediately understood. The so-called Tao Technique world was left behind by the masters of the Emperor Realm. It wasn't a real world. In the starry sky, there were three figures of divine light sitting cross-legged. Although the figures couldn't be seen clearly, they had the power to suppress the past and present. Needless to say, these three figures of divine light were the Tao Technique power left behind by the three ancient sovereigns. Qin Yu was guided by the divine light and floated in front of the three figures of divine light. In the next moment, countless rays of divine light converged toward Qin Yu. They surrounded Qin Yu and merged into Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu sensed with his mind. Those divine lights contained the true divine powers of the three ancient sovereigns. In addition, there was also the comprehension of the three ancient sovereigns when they were alive, after fusing with those divine lights. Qin Yu's comprehension of the indestructible Stone Emperor seal, Heaven's War Emperor transformation, and sealing divine light immediately increased by several levels. The more he comprehended, the more Qin Yu could vaguely sense the true cultivation of the three ancient sovereigns. P.S. Fixed update times, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., and 9 p.m. If there are new updates, they will be notified at the end of the chapter. Chapter 319. Their cultivation has already surpassed the limit of the Emperor Realm. Qin Yu focused his mind and put all his attention into the three Emperor's superpowers. The three Emperors' cultivation had definitely surpassed the Emperor Realm. They had reached the realm that Qin Yu had dreamed of in his previous life, but had always been stuck at the limit of the Emperor Realm. Qin Yu didn't know what realm was after the Emperor Realm. But one thing was without a doubt, after the Emperor Realm, there was definitely a realm of martial arts. However, in the history of the Qingyun realm, it seemed that no one had reached that realm. In other words, those who had stepped into that realm had all left the Qingyun realm. Just like the three emperors of the ancient era, time passed slowly. Qin Yu carefully comprehended the three emperors' superpowers and also focused on the power of the Tao left behind by the three emperors. Although with his current cultivation, he was still far from being able to comprehend the power of the Tao. But the power of the three emperors of the ancient era would light up a guiding light for him. In this Tao Technique world, Qin Yu spent a total of 2 months' time. In these 2 months, the entire spiritual state was shaken because of the three emperors' shadows that appeared above the imperial palace. Countless powerful forces sent powerhouses to investigate the situation. Those holy lands and divine dynasties that knew of the past glory of the imperial palace were even more uneasy. If the three emperors of the ancient era really reappeared, the entire Qingyun realm would change greatly. No force was willing to see that scene. Fortunately, after 2 months, the three emperors' shadows above the imperial palace gradually disappeared, and everything returned to normal. But in the dark, whether it was the forces outside the imperial palace or inside the imperial palace, there were undercurrents surging. Countless forces wanted to find out the reason for the appearance of the three emperor shadows. Unfortunately, even in the imperial palace, except for a few emperor realm powerhouses of the two royal bloodlines, the others had no idea what was going on. Because of this, all kinds of rumors flew around the imperial palace and the outside world. 3 months had passed. In the vast starry sky, the divine light that surrounded Qin Yu had all merged into his body. Qin Yu also woke up from his meditation state. In the past 3 months, Qin Yu's comprehension of the three emperors' mystical ability had improved significantly. As a result, Qin Yu's cultivation would improve by 2 layers, reaching the 9th layer martial progenitor realm, allowing him to achieve the nirvana realm. Whoosh! Qin Yu disappeared from the Tao Law world and returned to the God Palace. I'm finally out. Seeing Qin Yu appear, Sun Jiuxiao and Sun Shiyu's expressions both roused. At this moment, apart from Sun Jiuxiao and Sun Shiyu, there were 3 other figures that appeared. These 3 people were all Emperor Realm Masters. Shi Tiangang. Among the 3, Qin Yu saw an acquaintance from his previous life. He wore a golden robe and had a dignified expression. He wore a crown on his head. He was the Sky Emperor Palace's palace lord, Shi Tiangang. In Shi Tiangang's previous life, even in the 9 prefectures of the Heaven Domain, he was considered a top venerable emperor. Now that 1,000 years had passed, his strength must have become even more unfathomable. He is Shun Feng. This pressure, as expected, he has inherited the Tao laws and divine abilities of the 3 emperors. While Qin Yu was sizing up the 3 venerable emperors, Shi Tiangang and the other 2 were also sizing up Qin Yu. The more they looked, the more shocked they were. They were all people who had comprehended the divine abilities of the 3 emperors. But at this moment, they vaguely felt that their divine abilities were being suppressed by Qin Yu. Sun Shiyu still had a vague feeling of that. But Shi Tiangang, Sun Jiuxiao, and the other 3 were extremely clear. How is it? When Qin Yu walked out, Sun Jiuxiao came back to his senses and hurriedly went up to him, asking nervously. He was naturally asking if Qin Yu had a way to reignite the bloodline of the 3 emperors. In the Sky Emperor Palace, whether it was the descendants of the 3 emperors or the descendants of the 12 war generals, the bloodline was the most important. This was because the orthodoxy they cultivated and the divine abilities and secret techniques they comprehended were closely related to the power of the bloodline. Now, it was precisely because the bloodline of the 3 emperors was about to dissipate. The bloodline of the 12 war generals had been passed down flourishingly. That was why the status of the descendants of the 12 war generals gradually rose. They vaguely had the ambition to replace the position of the descendants of the 3 emperors. If Qin Yu did not succeed, then their position would really be in danger. There is indeed a way to reignite the bloodline, but it is very troublesome. Take a look for yourselves. Qin Yu nodded. Without waiting for Sun Jiuxiao and the others to ask, he flicked his finger, and a ball of divine light condensed. Sun Jiuxiao, Shi Tiangang, and the others immediately touched that ball of divine light. Soon, they obtained the method left behind by the 3 emperors to reignite the bloodline. Immortal Emperor Pill. The eyes of Sun Jiuxiao, Shi Tiangang, and the others lit up with excitement. That ball of divine light contained an ancient pill method that could reignite the bloodline of the 3 emperors. As long as this pill was refined, the descendants of the 3 emperors would be able to reignite the bloodline of the 3 emperors when they entered the world of Tao. Ancient heavenly Qilin blood, desolate divine phoenix bone, netherworld yellow spring water, immortal spirit herb. But in the next moment, the excitement on the faces of Sun Jiuxiao, Shi Tiangang, and the others gradually disappeared. They finally understood why Qin Yu said it was very troublesome. As the name implied, the ancient heavenly Qilin blood was the blood of the heavenly Qilin, an upper-bone divine beast. Countless years had passed since the ancient era. How could it be easy to find a pure, ancient heavenly Qilin? The desolate divine phoenix was a mutated beast born in the Great Desolate Era. It originally belonged to the divine phoenix race, but after its bloodline mutated, it became a divine phoenix, forming its own race. However, in terms of talent and combat prowess, it was comparable to a true divine phoenix. Among the known mutated beasts, the divine phoenix was definitely the strongest mutated beast. It could crush countless divine beasts. More importantly, this mutated beast was born in the Great Desolate Era. It only appeared occasionally in the Ancient Era. The Great Desolate Era was a period of time after the Immemorial Era was destroyed and before the Ancient Era was born. The Netherworld Yellow Spring Water was a kind of yellow spring water on the Underworld 9 Layers path. Rumor had it that it could cleanse one's soul and improve one's soul. Even martial emperor experts scrambled for it. No one knew where the Underworld 9 Layers path was. However, it did exist. In the history of the Sky region, there were many cultivators who had been to the Underworld 9 Layers path. Of course, whether it was the ancient heavenly Qilin blood, the desolate divine phoenix bone, or the netherworld yellow spring water. Although these were extremely rare, they had at least appeared in the history of the Sky region. However, the immortal spiritual grass was truly the legendary immortal medicine. It was rumored that someone had swallowed the immortal spiritual grass and directly ascended from an ordinary person. There were also rumors that someone had seen the immortal spiritual grass go through the 9 heavens lightning tribulation and become a divine immortal. There were many such rumors. However, none of them had been confirmed. No one had seen the real immortal spiritual grass with their own eyes. There were only a few descriptions of the immortal spiritual grass in some ancient books that recorded strange stories from the immemorial era. To find even one of these 4 godly medicines, one would have to be extremely lucky. Now, to find all 4, the excitement of Shi Tiangang, Sun Jiuxiao, and the other 3 disappeared. They were all silent. Chapter 320. Since the ancestors left behind a prophecy, it must be in the future. They saw the bloodline of the 3 emperors reappear in the ancient times. I think the 4 divine herbs might have already appeared. Sun Shiyu said after reading the recipe. Shi Tiangang, Sun Jiuxiao, and the other 3 were shocked. Indeed, if they could not find it, the ancestors would not have left behind such a prophecy. The 3 emperors would not have left behind the recipe. However, the recipe says that only those who have comprehended the divine powers of the 3 emperors can refine this pill. As Sun Shiyu said, she could not help looking at Qin Yu. Although she did not know the grade of the immortal emperor pill, just by looking at the 4 divine herbs, it was enough to tell that the immortal emperor pellet was definitely not an ordinary spiritual pellet. It might even require an emperor-grade pill alchemist to refine it. Emperor-grade pill alchemists were rare in the heavenly domain. However, it was not difficult for the Imperial Sky Palace to find an emperor-grade pill alchemist. The problem was that only those who had comprehended the divine powers of the 3 emperors and combined it with the secret techniques of the 3 emperors could refine this pill. This meant that only Qin Yu was capable of concocting this pill. The Imperial Sky Palace must nurture Qin Yu into an emperor-grade pill alchemist. Shi Tiangang, Sun Jiuxiao, and the other 3 obviously thought of this and frowned. There were not many emperor-grade pill alchemists in the entire heavenly domain. Every emperor-grade pill alchemist was indispensable in terms of resources, talent, and opportunities. That was not something that could be nurtured just because one wanted to. You don't have to worry about this. As long as you can find the divine herbs, I can refine the immortal emperor pill. Qin Yu understood what Sun Shiyu meant and said directly. To be honest, after seeing the refining of the immortal emperor pill. Qin Yu was sure that the descendants of the three emperors had seen the future and saw his existence. Otherwise, they would not have left such a prophecy. Of course, with Qin Yu's current cultivation, he could only refine divine pills at most. He could not refine an emperor-grade pill. However, the immortal emperor pill was different. Qin Yu had comprehended the divine powers and secret techniques of the three emperors. Therefore, it was not difficult to refine the immortal emperor pill. Really? Sun Jiuxiao was stunned. Of course it's true. Qin Yu nodded slightly and did not explain further. Shi Tiangang, Sun Jiuxiao, and the others were all a little surprised. He wondered if Qin Yu was at the level of a sovereign pill refiner, or had he obtained a method to refine immortal emperor pills from the three emperors' divine ability. However, with their ancestors' prophecy, they didn't doubt it too much. The most important thing now was to find the 4 godly herbs. As for Qin Yu's alchemy level, there would be time to slowly confirm it in the future. After leaving the divine palace, Sun Shiyu took Qin Yu to the residence of the core disciples. Shi Tiangang, Sun Jiuxiao, and the others immediately went to look for clues about the 5 divine medicines. Given the resources of the Imperial Palace of Sky Emperor, after going all out, a massive amount of information was immediately gathered. In the following month, Qin Yu did not leave the house. Even though only Shi Tiangang, Sun Jiuxiao, and Sun Shiyu knew that Qin Yu was the one who had been prophesied. However, the rumors regarding Qin Yu's identity still spread like wildfire in the Imperial Palace of Sky Emperor, especially after the Imperial Palace's patriarch, Shi Tiangang, had personally given the order that no one was allowed to disturb Qin Yu. It even attracted countless suspicions. Among them, the descendants of the 12 generals were the most suspicious. However, under Shi Tiangong's order, they could only investigate in secret. They did not dare to do anything to Qin Yu. Qin Yu did not care about the rumors. He had been cultivating in seclusion to consolidate his cultivation. He had achieved the 9th layer martial progenitor realm and was about to undergo the nirvana tribulation. Only a few months had passed. Qin Yu's cultivation was a little too long. Thus, he had to consolidate his foundation first. Qin Yu's cultivation was interrupted by Sun Shiyu's arrival a month and a half later. Trial at the Godly Emperor Pagoda? What do you mean? Qin Yu, who had just come out from seclusion, frowned after hearing Sun Shiyu's words. The trial of the blood demon had just ended not long ago. Why was there another trial of the Godly Emperor Tower? It's not about you, but the martial progenitor realm disciples of the younger generation of the Imperial Palace. Every 5 years, a trial of the Godly Emperor Tower will take place. The result of the trial will determine your status in the Imperial Palace. In other words, it's a ranking among the martial progenitor realm disciples. Sun Shiyu explained, I'm not interested. Qin Yu is too lazy to compete for the title. It's said that the top of the Godly Emperor Tower has a treasure left behind by an ancient godly emperor. Seeing Qin Yu's dispirited expression, Sun Shiyu giggled. A treasure left behind by a godly emperor? Qin Yu was startled. If it weren't for the forbidding aura of the Godly Emperor Tower, which only allows those below the martial monarch realm to enter the tower, even I would enter the tower again. Sun Shiyu nodded. Even with your talent, you didn't reach the top of the Godly Emperor Tower when you were a martial progenitor? Qin Yu asked curiously. Sun Shiyu had a monarch physique that was hard to come by among hundreds of millions of martial artists. Among the various known spiritual physiques in the Qingyan domain, the monarch physique was the highest aptitude. I fought my way up, but failed to enter. Sun Shiyu opened her hands, each of her palms glowing with divine light. It was the Stone Emperor's inextinguishable Stone Emperor seal and the Battle Emperor's Heavenly Battle Emperor change. Does it mean that the top of the tower requires all 3 Emperor skills? Qin Yu came to a realization. There's no evidence to prove it at the moment. However, the Godly Emperor Tower was left behind by the Godly Emperor, and no one has been to the top of the tower for so many years. Therefore, it's very likely that the 3 Emperor skills are needed to break the barrier left behind by the Godly Emperor. Sun Shiyu said, Qin Yu agreed. If the godly emperor had left behind a treasure, it would definitely be something extraordinary. Qin Yu was still refining the 9 Netherworld Dragon Spear, and the Divine Origin Mirror could only assist him in battle. It was not wise to keep using the godly weapon evolved from the heaven-destroying Battle Emperor's sword. It would be great if he could obtain a godly weapon that suited him well. The trial of the Godly Emperor Tower is a battle between the descendants of the 3 emperors and the descendants of the 12 generals. Therefore, there will always be a battle between the disciples of both sides. Once we enter the Godly Emperor Tower, you should team up with our people. Since you're the only core disciple, it's very likely that you'll be surrounded by the descendants of the 12 generals. Sun Shiyu said as she led Qin Yu to the Godly Emperor Tower. Qin Yu let out a smile. He was not worried at all. Although the Skull Ghost King was not with him, Qin Yu's cultivation was at the 9th layer martial progenitor realm. Even if he did not use the heaven-battling Azure Dragon, no one in the martial progenitor realm would be a threat to him. Since he had just acquired the new martial skills of the 3 emperors, he might as well try them out. Qin Yu and Sun Shiyu soon arrived at the Godly Emperor Tower. The Godly Emperor Tower was located in the western sector of the Heaven Emperor Palace. It was 90,000 zhang tall and entirely made of gold, surrounded by a magnificent glow. The area within 10,000 li was suppressed by a magnificent glow, as if an ancient godly emperor had arrived. Chapter 3:21. Meanwhile, at the side of the Godly Emperor Tower, the descendants of the 3 martial emperors and the generals were referred to as the 2 royal bloodlines and the 12 royal bloodlines. They had already gathered the heads of the younger generation martial ancestor realm cultivators. Even though the martial progenitor realm was considered the weakest in the Sky Emperor Palace. However, the younger generation was completely different. They were the future backbone of the Sky Emperor Palace. The trial of the Godly Emperor Sky was held once every 5 years. Those who were able to stand out in the trial were usually geniuses who greatly surpassed their peers. For example, Sun Shiyu, who had once stood out in the trial of the Godly Emperor Tower. That being said, the situation was exactly as Sun Shiyu had described. The trial of the Divine Emperor Tower had unknowingly turned into a contest between the 2 Zhongfangs. As such, the crowd from both factions had gathered to spectate. The First Lady is here. That kid, is he the descendant of the martial emperor who has returned? How arrogant to have the First Lady invite him here in person. Humph! He has comprehended the martial arts of the 3 martial emperors and became a core disciple at the martial progenitor realm. Of course, he deserves special treatment. Humph! I would like to see how strong this so-called genius is. Seeing Sun Shiyu arrive with Qin Yu, the crowd immediately focused their attention on Qin Yu. Qin Yu had recently become a core disciple with his cultivation of the martial progenitor realm. It had caused quite a stir among the disciples of the Sky Emperor Palace. Many disciples were eager to meet this legendary genius during the trial of the Godly Emperor Tower. 9th layer martial progenitor realm? This kid, apart from the younger generation, the descendants of the older generation of battle generals were also paying attention to Qin Yu without batting an eyelid. When they saw how Qin Yu's cultivation had improved by 2 layers in just a few months, they immediately burst into an uproar. Even Sun Shiyu's cultivation had not improved so rapidly in the past. According to Qin Yu's cultivation speed, it would only take a few years for him to achieve the martial monarch realm. Could he really be the one who was prophesied? The eyes of the descendant of the blue demon general, Qin Gongyun, flickered with astonishment. Not many people in the Sky Emperor Palace were aware of the prophecy left by the descendant of the Battle Emperor. Qin Gongyun was one of the insiders. Although the palace master had sealed off all information regarding the appearance of the 3 sovereigns' phantoms, even the Emperor Realm Masters of the 12 War Generals' bloodline couldn't find out anything. Even the Emperor Realm Masters who were descendants of the 3 emperors didn't know much about them. However, Qin Gongyun instinctively suspected that this matter definitely had something to do with Qin Yu. That was because Qin Yu was the only person in the history of the Sky Emperor Palace who comprehended all the abilities of the three emperors. It was Sun Shiyu who personally went to bring him back. The three emperor phantoms appeared after Qin Yu became a core disciple. Connecting all these things together, she couldn't help but feel suspicious. Sister Shiyu. A group of people walked towards them. The one leading them was the elegant and handsome Shi Jingtian. Behind Shi Jingtian, there were martial emperors and martial ancestors from the younger generation of the three sovereigns. Shenfeng, let me introduce you. This is the descendant of the Stone Emperor, the son of the palace master, Shi Jingtian. Sun Shiyu introduced Shi Jingtian to Qin Yu. In Sun Shiyu's opinion, the three of them were the most outstanding among the descendants of the three sovereigns. In the future, they would represent their respective ancestors and control the three bloodlines of the Sky Emperor Palace. There was no harm in having a good relationship with them. Brother Shun Feng, in the previous God Emperor Tower trial, Sister Shiyu and I both reached the martial emperor realm. As a result, they took the first place in the trial. This time, all of you have to work together and not let them steal the limelight again. Shi Jingtian smiled at Qin Yu and the surrounding geniuses. After greeting each other, Qin Yu raised his head and looked at the God Emperor Tower. The God Emperor Tower was indeed filled with a fluctuation that faintly resonated with the ceiling divine light. There might really be a treasure left behind by the God Emperor hidden in this ancient tower. Hung long, long. When the scorching sun rose to the sky, the 90,000 feet tall God Emperor Tower emitted a dazzling ceiling divine light. As the ceiling divine light dissipated, the 100 feet ancient door opened and a vast aura swept out. Everyone present, regardless of whether they were martial progenitors or martial monarchs, felt their hearts skip a beat. However, Qin Yu was the only one who did not feel anything. Even the power of the ceiling divine light in his body seemed to have been strengthened. The trial of the God Emperor Tower begins now. The white-haired first elder appeared and ordered the trial to begin. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As the white-haired first elder spoke, the martial progenitor realm disciples around the godly Emperor Tower, who were already on standby, immediately charged into the ancient door. Qin Yu also entered the God Emperor Tower in a flash. Sister Shiyu, do you think Ling Xiao and Duan Qin can suppress Gu Fengshuang, Qi Shanhai, and the others? After thousands of martial progenitors entered the God Emperor Tower, Shi Jingtian looked at the God Emperor Tower and the divine light crystal screen as he chatted with Sun Shiyu. The figures shown on the divine light crystal screen were the martial progenitors who had entered the God Emperor Tower. Although there are a few powerful geniuses among the descendants of the 12 battle generals. However, as long as Qin Yu is not eliminated, they won't stand a chance. Sun Shiyu said, "Is that so?" Shi Jingtian did not comment on it. Although Qin Yu could kill the Nirvana realm blood demon and had the ability to defeat enemies with a higher cultivation level. However, the geniuses who were participating in the trial of the God Emperor Tower, the strongest among them had reached the limit of the Nirvana realm in the martial progenitor realm. They would be able to reach the martial monarch realm when the time came. Therefore, in the trial of the God Emperor Tower, Shi Jingtian thought that Shi Ling Xiao, Sun Duan Qing, and the others who had reached the limit of the martial progenitor realm could suppress the descendants of the 12 battle generals. As for Qin Yu, although he was talented, however, it would be difficult for him to overcome such a huge gap. Sun Shiyu did not say anything as she looked at the divine light crystal screen where Qin Yu was. Apart from Sun Shiyu, most of the descendants of the 12 battle generals were also paying attention to Qin Yu. At this moment, Qin Yu appeared in a mountain range. The forest was filled with thick fog and visibility was limited to a few meters. His perception was also completely sealed by the ceiling divine light that filled the area. In fact, even flying in a void was forbidden. Qin Yu relied on the perception of the divine light of the seal and rushed in a certain direction. With his speed, he should be 1,000 miles away by now. However, He had not reached the mountain range yet. Swoosh! Suddenly, a black shadow pounced toward Qin at lightning speed. It was a Nirvana realm martial progenitor realm ferocious beast, and it had obviously adapted to the dense fog in a mountain range. When it pounced, there was no warning, and it was extremely dangerous. Poof! Qin waved his hand. An ray of divine light hit the ferocious beast. The divine light turned into a curved blade, and a cold light flashed. Blood and flesh immediately scattered, and the ferocious beast was directly cut in half. Qin did not even look at the ferocious beast and continued to move forward. The further he went, the more ferocious beasts and even monsters like stones and trees that had turned into spirits appeared. Qin continued to move forward, and his speed did not slow down at all. At this moment, various battles were taking place in the countless trial spaces in the God Emperor Tower. There were formations and restrictions, natural danger zones, and ancient puppet beasts. Chapter 3:22. Inside the godly sovereign tower, there were all kinds of trials. Among the thousands of martial progenitor realm geniuses, a few hundred had already been eliminated. The godly sovereign tower had been left behind by the ancient godly emperor. The trials left behind inside were naturally not that easy to pass. As the trials continued, the strength and talents of the thousands of geniuses were clearly displayed. The white-haired elder and the others recorded the outstanding performances of the disciples. The more outstanding their performance, the more the heavenly emperor palace would focus on nurturing them. Bang! Above the ocean, a deafening explosion could be heard as waves of 10,000 zhang high appeared. A young man in a blue robe stepped out from the waves without a single drop of water on his body. As the young man in a blue robe walked past, a peak martial progenitor realm, six-winged demon snake floated to the surface of the ocean, completely lifeless. Whoosh! A destructive sword glow flashed, tearing the sky apart. A young man carrying a giant pitch-black sword walked past with a cold expression. After the young man with the giant sword left, the world with the crack in the sky as the center gradually disappeared. This was actually a lifelike illusion array. Rumble! Above the desolate plains, the ground began to tremble violently. Huge, abyss-like cracks began to appear on the ground. An honest-looking young man with a muscular body stepped out from the abyss-like crack and disappeared into the distance in the blink of an eye. Following this, blood gushed out from the abyss-like crack and dyed the ground red. A huge figure could be vaguely seen in the blood, motionless as if it were dead. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A young man with a saber on his back was walking forward in a world filled with snow and ice blades. Wherever he passed, the ice blades that were capable of killing Nirvana martial progenitors immediately melted. Around the young man, there was a wave of air that was as hot as magma revolving around him. The most outstanding ones are indeed Shiling Xiao and Sun Duanqing. Gu Fengshuang, Qi Shanhai, Feng Tianluo, and the others are not far behind. That new descendant of the ancient godly emperor is quite surprising. He's in the first row, too. Although the outer region is dangerous, it's not very competitive. We can only see their true strength when we reach the central region. Outside the godly sovereign tower, the people of the heavenly emperor palace, looking at the divine light crystal screens, the geniuses who were leading all the way were all in a heated discussion. Whoosh! The mist was torn apart as a figure dashed out, who was none other than Qin. Before him were groups of ancient palaces. Qin entered the nearest palace and arrived at a huge square. Crack! As Qin entered the square, the entrance of the godly palace, the entrance of the godly sovereign tower was. Around the square, there were 10 entrances to the palaces. Whoosh! A ray of divine light descended and condensed into a divine seal above Qin head. Qin raised his head to look. Whoosh! 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 Whoosh tower whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! Whoosh, sovereign, whoosh, cultivators, 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 cultivators here. 10 participants do whores of hoy whoosh of God seals. If they didn't want to fight, they could wait for the time to pass and leave together to proceed to the next round. As for the divine seal on his head, every trial taker who entered this palace would have one. After defeating others, they would snatch the seals of others. The more Tao seals he plundered, the more helpful it would be for him to reach the top of the divine sovereign tower. After waiting for more than 2 hours, a trial taker finally arrived. It was a young man in a black robe. His cultivation was at the Nirvana 5th Revolution martial ancestor realm. Qin did not know if he was a descendant of the 3 sovereigns or the 12 war generals. Anyway, to reach the summit of the divine sovereign tower, Qin had to eliminate all of the challengers. Therefore, to Qin, it made no difference whether the people he met were the descendants of the 3 sovereigns or the 12 war generals. Qin didn't know the background of the black-clothed youth. However, when the black-robed young man saw Qin, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He rushed towards Qin with a single step, and a pitch-black battle axe appeared in his hand. Ancient and mysterious spirit tattoos lit up. A vast and terrifying axe light tore through the air and slashed towards Qin, who was sitting cross-legged. Bang! A loud sound was heard. That shockingly powerful axe light seemed to have chopped down on a diamond. It exploded and turned into countless rays of light that scattered in all directions. An ancient divine seal appeared beside Qin without any warning. It was the eternal stone emperor seal. At this moment, outside the divine sovereign tower, the eyes of Sun Shiyu, Shi Jingtian, and the others who had inherited the stone emperor's divine ability were filled with astonishment. 9 slashes of the mad demon. The black-clothed youth naturally recognized the eternal stone emperor seal. However, he did not flinch. A strange demonic light appeared in his eyes, and his aura immediately soared. The pitch-black battle axe's aura became more powerful, and the void rippled. Bang! Qin waved his hand, and a trace of sealing divine light flashed in his palm. The black-clothed youth, who was attacking with vast power, stiffened. He was stunned and slowly lowered his head. His heart had been penetrated by Naz's sealing divine light. His entire heart seemed to be in Qin Yu's hands. Swoosh! Divine light fell from the sky, and the black-clothed youth was directly eliminated and sent out of the divine sovereign tower. The divine seal above his head automatically merged with the divine seal above Qin Yu's head. Qin Yu was able to clearly sense that the fluctuations of the God Emperor's seal contained within his divine seal had become even more powerful. As expected, his 3 emperors' superpower can increase the power of the divine sovereign tower. The countless onlookers outside the divine sovereign tower were not surprised by the black-clothed youth's defeat. In the previous battle, after Qin Yu had used the 3 emperors' superpower, the divine sovereign tower's power of the divine sovereign Tao was vaguely attracted by Qin Yu's superpower. It was also precisely because of this that Qin Yu's immortal stone emperor's seal and sealing divine light possessed such astonishing might. He had easily defeated a Nirvana realm martial ancestor with a single palm. He has comprehended all the 3 emperors' superpower, and it has such an effect. However, this also shocked the descendants of the 3 emperors and caused a heated discussion. It was the first time they had seen such a situation. After all, in the history of the Heavenly Emperor Palace, there had never been a person who had comprehended all the superpower of the 3 emperors. However, the elders of the 12 war generals' descendants had extremely ugly expressions. Although it was only a trace of power, the power of the Tao was a power that only Emperor Realm Masters could control. In front of such power, martial ancestors had no chance of resisting. In this divine sovereign tower trial, there was probably no one who could be Qin Yu's opponent. Kacha! At this moment, not long after the black-clothed youth was eliminated, 2 martial ancestor sky prides rushed in at almost the same time. One of them was a descendant of the 3 emperors, while the other was a descendant of the 12 war generals. Their cultivations were both Nirvana realm martial ancestors. Shwa shwa. However, just as they entered, two divine lights shot towards them at an extremely fast speed. Vast power swept out, and before the two sky prides could react, they were forcefully eliminated. Qin Yu dispersed his divine light clone. The two divine seals gathered on the divine seal above his head. Chapter 323. This guy even disqualified his own people. Shi Jingtian was astounded seeing this. Before the trial began, he had purposely asked Qin Yu to meet the martial progenitor realm geniuses among the descendants of the three martial emperors. His intention was for them to team up and enter the next round of the trial. There was more than one square like the one in the godly emperor pagoda. The further into the next round, the stronger the opponents would be, and the greater the number of people they would encounter. Regardless of how strong their individual strength was, they would be disqualified once they were surrounded. However, it was obvious that Qin Yu was planning to defeat all the martial progenitor realm geniuses on his own. Wasn't he a little too confident in his own strength? Sun Shiyu's eyes flickered. Even though Qin Yu's cultivation was only at the 9th layer martial progenitor realm. However, the speed of Qin Yu's growth was so fast that it gave her a strong sense of urgency. She had never felt the same way, even when facing the other three saints of the Qingzhou continent. Sun Shiyu had personally brought Qin Yu here from the 7 great martial realms. She was aware of when Qin Yu had achieved the martial progenitor realm. However, Qin Yu was already able to suppress the Nirvana martial progenitor realm within such a short period of time. Once he achieved the Nirvana realm, he would be able to achieve the martial monarch realm without the help of the skeleton phantom emperor. Qin Yu was unaware of the chaos taking place outside the godly emperor pagoda. He could sense that the suppression from the godly seal had grown stronger. He showed no mercy to the people who had entered the square, eliminating all 9 of them. Qin Yu entered the square on his own and passed through the glowing door that appeared out of nowhere. Behind the glowing door, Qin Yu appeared on a stage similar to an arena. This time around, other than Qin Yu, there were also numerous gates of light in the sky above the arena. The 17 figures were split into 2 groups, the descendants of the 3 martial emperors and the descendants of the 12 battle generals. The battle took place once again. Qin Yu attacked fiercely without distinguishing between friend and foe. The others were no match against Qin Yu despite teaming up. They were all eliminated with ease. Then, Qin Yu entered the 3rd round. The 3rd round took place on a vast grassland. This time, there were even more people, 30 to 40 of them. As always, Qin Yu continued to attack. He was undefeatable. With an unequaled disposition, he completely crushed everyone else. Of course, other than Qin Yu, who was in the limelight. Among the martial progenitors of the Emperor Palace, Shi Lingxiao, Sun Duanqing, Gu Fengshuang, Qi Shanhai, Feng Tianluo, and the others stood out too. However, they were different from Qin Yu, who was fighting alone. Each of them had a group of genius disciples following them. The battle between over 100 people was quite a spectacular sight. That's right. Haha. Shun Feng actually bumped into Feng Tianluo and the others. One against more than 50 people. Let's see how arrogant he can be now. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside the divine sovereign tower. Countless gazes converged on a crystal screen. The scene that appeared on the crystal screen was none other than Qin Yu's meeting with more than 50 descendants of battle generals. This caused the descendants of the 12 generals who had been eliminated by Qin Yu to be extremely excited. It was as if they could already see Qin Yu being eliminated. Even the descendants of the 3 martial emperors glanced at Qin Yu with dissatisfaction. Most of them had been eliminated by Qin Yu too. Inside the divine sovereign tower, above a vast volcano, Qin Yu glanced at the 50 people who had appeared. Although he was at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, Qin Yu did not show any sign of worry. Instead, he wore a smile on his face. It was obvious that many of them had been eliminated, as the god seals on their heads were more solid than the previous one. To Qin Yu, They were like fat lambs that had delivered themselves to his doorstep. Isn't that Shin Feng? Strange, why is he alone? Could it be that he was lucky enough to be teleported here? When the 50 descendants of the generals saw Qin Yu appear alone, they discussed incessantly. In order to guard against an ambush, they even carefully searched the surroundings. In the end, Qin Yu was really alone. The leader of the 50 people was a handsome youth, holding a long spear in his hand, his aura soaring to the clouds. He was the descendant of the General Martial Emperor, one of the 3 great geniuses in the ancestor realm, Feng Tianluo. All of you move aside. I want to see what ability this descendant of the divine sovereign has to be able to become a core disciple. When Feng Tianluo saw Qin Yu, a cold light flashed across his eyes, and he took a large stride forward. The ancient spirit runes revolving around the long spear in his hand shone. The fierce aura emitted from his entire person became more and more powerful and terrifying. Swoosh! Qin Yu saw through Feng Tianluo's intention and did not speak nonsense. Extreme speed law surged, turning into a ray of light, rushing out like a ghost. When he rushed out, his right hand clenched into a fist, and dense divine light revolved around his fist, condensing into a shocking fist light. Just in time, Feng Tianluo smiled coldly and did not retreat in the slightest, continuing to charge forward. He was extremely displeased with Qin Yu, who jumped out inexplicably and was directly listed as a core disciple. Although Qin Yu passed the Blood Demon trial, but the current Blood Demon continent was far from the Blood Demon continent of the ancient 3 sovereigns era. He could easily pass that level of trial. Why was Qin Yu special? Therefore, Feng Tianluo had long made up his mind. Once he encountered Qin Yu in the Divine Sovereign Tower trial, he must personally defeat Qin Yu. Now that he really encountered Qin Yu, Feng Tianluo naturally would not hold back at all. Soul-severing spear. Seeing Qin Yu enter the attack range, Feng Tianluo became one with the spear. Wherever the long spear passed, deep ripples appeared in the void. Even the space at the tip of the spear was faintly torn apart, showing the power of Feng Tianluo's spear. Bang! A violent collision sounded, and violent destructive law shock waves exploded, sweeping out in all directions. But then, a clear cracking sound could be heard. A figure flew out uncontrollably like a kite, and blood splattered in the void. Feng Tianluo's face was pale, and his right hand was crushed, dripping with blood. Swoosh! A ray of divine light fell, and the severely injured Feng Tianluo was eliminated. Brother Tianluo lost? No way. He lost in one move. Is Shun Feng's strength that strong? Looking at Feng Tianluo, who was vomiting blood and flying out, the more than 50 descendants of the generals were in disbelief. Among the tens of thousands of martial progenitor realm disciples in the Sky Emperor Palace, Feng Tianluo's strength was definitely enough to be ranked in the top 5. He could enter the martial emperor realm at any time and become a core disciple. However, such a dazzling genius was actually unable to withstand a single strike from Qin Yu. One must know that Qin Yu's cultivation was only at the 9th level martial ancestor realm. He had yet to officially step into the true nirvana stage. His ability to defeat opponents of a higher level was simply terrifying, not to mention the younger generation of the martial progenitor realm. Even the core disciples and elders of the martial progenitor realm outside the Divine Sovereign Tower were astounded. Although they knew that Qin Yu was able to utilize the martial arts of the Divine Sovereign Tower. However, he still did not expect for Qin Yu to be this powerful. Shun Tianluo's cultivation had reached the limit of the martial progenitor realm, and he was not an idiot without any battle strength. Chapter 3:24. Damn it, let's attack together and eliminate him. That's right, no matter how strong he is, he's only one person. I don't believe he can handle so many of us. The martial progenitor realm geniuses collected their thoughts. Each and every one of them burst forth with their nomological energy. Frantically, They rushed to surround and attack Qinyu. Godly light clones. Qinyu displayed a smile on his face. No matter how many of them there were, it was useless against him. Rays of godly light were emitted from Qinyu's body. Each beam of divine light transformed into a lifelike divine light clone in the void. There were over 100 of them. These are the godly emperor's godly light clones? What the hell? Why are there so many of them? The cultivators who were charging at Qinyu blurted out in astonishment, as if they had seen a ghost. Even though the godly emperor's lineage had left the emperor's palace long ago. As disciples of the emperor's palace, they were aware of the godly emperor's secret technique of cloning. These divine light incarnations possessed the cultivation of Qinyu's true body. In other words, were they facing over 100 clones of Qinyu who had defeated a genius like Feng Tianluo with a single punch? How were they supposed to fight against him? Bang, bang, bang. Qinyu did not care about the 50-odd people whose auras had decreased greatly. With a thought, all of his divine light avatars pounced forward. An earth-shattering battle took place. Even the volcano trembled violently, as if it was going to erupt at any time. In the midst of the battle, rays of godly light descended from the sky. In a short span of a few dozen breaths, the 50-plus descendants of battle generals were all eliminated. The seal above Qinyu's head glowed brighter, as if it were made of gold. I was wondering why he was so confident. It turns out that he still has a trick up his sleeve. Outside the godly emperor tower, Shi Jingtian wore an astounded look. The godly emperor's secret technique was even more troublesome than the godly light of sealing. It had an overwhelming advantage in a battle between cultivators with the same cultivation. You shouldn't be able to produce so many clones outside the godly emperor tower. Even if he could, their strength wouldn't be that strong. Sun Xiu saw it more clearly. Qinyu's godlight incarnation was strengthened by the God Emperor Pagoda's Dao magic. This time, I'd like to see how they're going to show off. Shi Jingtian looked at the descendants of the 12 war emperors and laughed out loud. In the previous trial of the God's sovereign tower, the descendant of a war general had taken first place. In these 5 years, the descendants of the generals had often used this matter to show off outside. He was trying to shake the subordinate forces of the heavenly imperial palace. Now, any one of the descendants of the 3 sovereigns could defeat all of them. Now, let's see if they still have the face to show off. If I had known earlier, I would have. Occasionally, the descendants of battle generals and elders, regardless of whether they were elders or the younger generation, all had extremely ugly expressions. In the battle with Feng Tianluo, Qinyu's terrifying battle prowess had been revealed. Next, unless everyone in the divine sovereign tower joined forces, it would be impossible to suppress Qinyu. This made the killing intent in the eyes of Qin Gongyun and the others who had wanted to kill Qinyu for a long time. Qinyu's talent was so outstanding that they could even see the rise of another Sun Xiu. If Qinyu also achieved the martial monarch realm, the descendants of the 3 sovereigns would surely become a famous genius in the spiritual continent in the future. A few moments later, in the divine sovereign tower, most of the martial progenitor realm geniuses had been eliminated. Now, there were only 5 forces left in the divine sovereign tower. To be precise, there were 4 factions and 1 person. The 4 factions were the descendants of Ashur Emperor Shi Lingxiao and the Battle Emperor Sun Duanqing. Gu Fengshuang, the descendant of the Berserk Demon Battle General, and Qi Shanhai, the descendant of the Heavenly Flame Battle General. The last person was none other than Qinyu. After the battles along the way, they had entered the core of the Divine Sovereign Tower from the central region. So that's the Divine Sovereign Tower. Qinyu was hiding in the clouds high up in the sky. There was a divine pagoda completely formed by divine light in front of them. The godly tower looked extremely similar to the divine sovereign tower. At this moment, other than Qinyu, there were already 4 other powers gathered outside of the divine pagoda. A terrifying, murderous aura swept across the place. It seems like we're the only ones here. Following a soft chuckle, Shi Lingxiao in a blue robe walked out from the crowd. As he spoke, his gaze swept across all the disciples of the Sky Emperor Palace without batting an eyelid. His eyes flickered with surprise when he did not see Qin Yu. Yo, why isn't your martial progenitor core disciple here? Did he get eliminated? It seems like the first miss has made a mistake this time. Qi Shanhai, who was carrying his saber, glanced at Shiling Xiao and the others and wore a cold grin. Qi Shanhai, if you want to die, I'll send you on your way. Sun Duanqing carried a pitch-black giant sword on his shoulder and wore a cold expression. Seeing Qi Shanhai's disrespectful words to Sun Shiyu, his killing intent surged, and a shocking murderous aura soared into the sky. Let's see if you have what it takes. Qi Shanhai showed no sign of fear. The grin on his face grew wider. We'll have plenty of time to fight later. Let's enter the tower first. Gu Fengshuang, who had a bulky figure and an honest appearance, tried to mediate the situation with a smile. I'm sorry. I'm afraid you can't enter the tower. At that instant, a calm voice could be heard. The eyelids of Shiling Xiao and the others jumped. They immediately glanced toward the voice. They didn't know when, but a figure had appeared right under their noses. Shiling Xiao and the others could feel a chill running down their spines. The figure was none other than Qin Yu. Shen Feng, you came alone? Where are the others? Shiling Xiao soon collected his thoughts and scanned his surroundings in astonishment. Apart from Qin Yu, he did not see any other descendants of the three martial progenitors. Even Qi Shanhai and Gu Fengshuang were confused. If Qin Yu was here, it meant that all the descendants of the martial progenitors in the direction that Qin Yu had come from had been eliminated. However, the descendants of the three martial progenitors should have come with Qin Yu. Why was Qin Yu the only one here? They have something to do, so they left first. Qin Yu said calmly. As soon as he finished speaking, numerous ancient and profound formation markings suffused his left hand, and they silently fused into space. They left first. Before Shiling Xiao could react, he suddenly sensed a strong force of runes lingering in the air. What are you trying to do? Qi Shanhai raised his head when he sensed it too. In the void, a huge formation appeared. All of them were enveloped by the spirit formation. A destructive pressure descended, and a sense of danger that made their hair stand on end appeared. At that instant, they felt like they were facing a martial monarch realm expert. In addition to Qi Shanhai and Gu Fengshuang, even Shiling Xiao and Sun Duanqing wore serious looks. The killing formation that Qin Yu had set up had locked onto them too. It was obvious that Qin Yu was planning to make his move too. Dragon Sealing Formation. Qin Yu was aware of the power of the three martial progenitors' new martial progenitors. He was not interested in a battle between martial progenitors. If it weren't for the treasure that the martial progenitors had left in the godly Emperor Pagoda, he would not even bother taking part in the trial. Chapter 325. Do you think you can deal with all of us with this formation? You're overestimating yourself. Qi Shanhai's face darkened as he unsheathed his saber. A heat wave visible to the naked, I turned into a blazing flame, distorting the void. It was the superpower of the Heavenly Fire Warrior bloodline, the power of Heavenly Fire. Appear. Gu Fengshuang's simple and honest face also became serious as he quickly formed a seal with both hands. Mysterious demonic runes appeared on his sturdy body. Wisps of demonic mist emerged and turned into a 10-foot-tall demonic figure behind him. A violent aura was emitted. The Mad Demon Warrior's superpower, the Mad Demon Spirit. As the two of them each displayed their bloodline superpower, the strength of the two of them immediately increased rapidly. Vaguely, they touched the martial emperor realm. The other descendants also displayed their bloodline superpower or urged the laws of heaven and earth. Hundreds of violent and terrifying auras gathered together, increasing each other's power. It was for this reason that the relationship between the descendants of the 12 war generals was so close and strong. Unmovable stone emperor seal. Shiling Xiao withdrew his gaze from Qin Yu, who had an indifferent expression. As divine light flickered, An ancient stone seal descended and guarded him. Since Qin Yu wanted to fight, then let's have a head-on confrontation. To be honest, Shi Lingxiao's battle intent was surging in his heart towards Qin Yu's sudden appearance. He did not think that he was inferior to Qin Yu. Now that there was a chance to fight, it was exactly what he wanted. Chaos Cauldron. Sun Duanqing's ancient sword floated around him as he formed a seal with both hands. The War Emperor transformation was displayed, turning into an ancient cauldron suspended above his head. A layer of faint black light was emitted from the ancient cauldron, filling the void. Since Qin Yu wanted to fight, then he naturally would not be afraid. Seeing that Shi Lingxiao and Sun Duanqing were serious, the other descendants of the three emperors also made their moves. For a time, the void became turbulent, emitting destructive fluctuations. One against hundreds? That kid is too confident, isn't he? Indeed, even with the help of the dragon locking formation, it's absolutely impossible to deal with so many people. Outside of the divine sovereign tower, numerous gazes were looking at Qin Yu with shock. Even though Qin Yu had set up a killing array in advance and was able to draw on a trace of the Divine Emperor's dermic powers, the Divine Emperor's dermic powers were not enough. However, to deal with a few hundred martial progenitor realm geniuses on his own, in their eyes, this was completely impossible. Heavenly Thunder God Curse, Thunder Prison. Qin Yu's thunder laws manifested into arcs of lightning that revolved around him. Dense divine light condensed in the void as his 10 fingers moved. Ancient lightning runes condensed in the void. The next moment, a deafening thunderclap exploded. Dazzling lightning bolts were born from the ancient thunder incantations, and they were connected to each other. The entire space of the Dragonlock formation turned into a lightning prison. Vast and majestic thunderbolt power surged in the void. Exuding a destructive power, it wreaked havoc in the area. Whoosh, whoosh. At that instant, over 10 martial progenitor realm geniuses were knocked out. After the heavenly thunder god curse transformed into a lightning prison, rays of godly light were emitted from Qin Yu's figure, as hundreds of clones of godly light appeared once again. The place instantly turned chaotic. This time, Qin Yu's true self was participating in the battle too. The sky-cracking godly spear appeared and charged at Qi Shanhai, who had turned into a fiery figure. Just in time, Qi Shanhai was instantly aware of it. He let out a hollow laugh and advanced instead of backing away. The saber in his hand was covered in fiery runes as he faced Qin Yu head-on. A sizzling sound could be heard as the fiery saber slashed at the air. The rift was torn apart like the surface of water. Qin Yu thrust his spear forward without any hesitation. The sky shook violently as the two clashed. Qi Shanhai's expression changed tremendously. His eyes were filled with astonishment as he was sent flying. Bang! The moment the saber and the spear collided, Qi Shanhai felt a vast and unparalleled divine power enter his body through the saber. The force was so terrifying that it felt like an ancient ferocious beast had broken into his body. The heavenly fire true force and the force of the rules in his body were completely destroyed. Puff! Qi Shanhai's figure shuddered violently as he was no longer able to resist Qin Yu's attack. He was sent flying while coughing out blood. Whoosh! The spear glow pierced through the sky. Qin Yu did not give Qi Shanhai any chance to react as he eliminated him with a single strike. The sight caused the other martial progenitor realm geniuses to be dumbfounded. Qi Shanhai, one of the top geniuses of the martial progenitor realm, was defeated by Qin Yu in 2 moves? How is it possible for a 9th-layer martial progenitor realm cultivator to possess such outstanding strength? Shi Lingxiao, Sun Duanqing, and Feng Tianluo stared with their eyes open wide as their hearts turned cold. The sight before them completely shattered the battle intent in their hearts. They had only seen martial monarchs who were able to defeat a peak martial progenitor with a single move. Thunderstrike. Qin Yu did not stop attacking as he thrust his spear forward. The boundless lightning in the void was triggered, crashing into a certain area with a loud bang. accompanied by a destructive explosion of lightning. The martial progenitor realm geniuses and the clones of the godly glows were severely injured, resulting in a huge number of people being eliminated. Under Qin Yu's continuous and berserk attacks, Qin Yu was unable to stop them. The number of martial progenitor realm geniuses decreased rapidly. In just less than half an hour, only a little over 100 people were still struggling to survive. The god seal above Qin Yu's head began to change slightly. At a glance, it felt like it was turning into a statue. Whoosh! Qin Yu scanned the place and saw Gu Fengshuang being surrounded by the 5 clones of the godly glows. He immediately dashed forward. Berserk demon! Gu Fengshuang straightened his face after being targeted by Qin Yu. Following a groan, he immediately merged with the demon behind him, resulting in a stronger aura. Following this, Gu Fengshuang threw a punch forward, knocking the 5 clones of the godly glows away as he faced Qin Yu head-on. He knew that he was no match for Qin Yu. Therefore, he wanted to go all out to see how big the gap was between him and Qin Yu. The thunderclap spear clashed with the berserk demon fist, resulting in a deep sound that sounded like a heart exploding. After Gu Fengshuang's right arm shook violently, blood and flesh splattered everywhere as his right arm was pierced through. Unable to resist the lightning attack, he vomited blood and was eliminated. Sky-severing sword. At this moment, Sun Duanqing, who had the ancient cauldron above his head, took the opportunity to attack. He held a pitch-black giant sword in his hand and slashed out with shocking power. On Sun Duanqing's left, Shi Lingxiao formed the motionless stone emperor seal and attacked silently. Now, both Gu Fengshuang and Qi Shanhai had been eliminated. Therefore, the first place of this trial would be the descendants of the 3 emperors. Therefore, there was no need to worry about anything. Great thunderclap seal. Qin Yu's heart moved. The majestic thunderclaps that enveloped the sky suddenly gathered at this moment. They turned into 2 thunderclap seals that were 1,000 feet long and came crashing down. Rumble. Sun Duanqing and Shi Lingxiao were forcefully suppressed before they could even get close to Qin Yu. The motionless stone emperor seal and the ancient cauldron couldn't resist the thunderclap divine weapon that Qin Yu had transformed and directly exploded. After Shi Lingxiao and Sun Duanqing vomited blood and flew backward, they were swept out by the 2 divine lights. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.